Welcome to the Paranormal M channel. I'm finally sitting down to share my own paranormal experiences with you. Thanks so much for sending in your stories. Keep them coming. And don't forget to drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Ready for today's stories? Put on your headphones, get comfortable, and let's dive into tonight's eerie tales. Oh, and make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. Alright? Let's begin. Alright. I've kept this to myself for a long time, and I'm only telling it now because it's been sitting in my head for years, like a stone I can't put down. This happened back in 2018, right around the time I was turning 19. I'm in my mid-20s now, and I still don't talk about it with anyone in my real life. Not because I'm trying to be mysterious, more because I know exactly how it would sound. People would either think I'm lying, or they'd look at me like I'd lost my mind. And I've always been the kind of person who hates being called a liar. Like, it genuinely gets under my skin. So I just don't bring it up. If someone asks me if I've ever had anything weird happen, I usually shrug and say, nah. But the truth is, yeah, something happened. And before you picture me as some paranormal superfan, no, I'm not religious. I'm not out here chasing ghost stories or UFO stuff. I'd call myself skeptical, maybe mildly agnostic. I like explanations that make sense. I usually assume there's a normal reason for things, even if the normal reason is boring. This one never got a normal reason. So here's the setup. My mom, my little brother, and I went down to visit my grandparents near a small town in southern Missouri, out near the Ozarks. Not exactly the middle of nowhere, but the kind of place where neighbors can still mean a mile or two down a gravel road. My grandparents had this house tucked into the hills, and we were staying in a little camper a short walk from their place. One afternoon, a few hours before dusk, I decided to take their four-wheeler out. I'd ridden around the property before, but that day I wanted to go deeper, follow the trail that locals used for horses and ATVs. My grandpa told me, you can't really get lost, it's basically one main route. So I filled it up, found the trail, and headed out. At first, it was perfect. Trees swaying, birds going nuts, insects buzzing. Just that living, breathing sound the woods have when everything's doing what it's supposed to do. I rode for a while, longer than I meant to. By the time I checked the gas, I was thinking, okay, I should turn around soon. But the trail was narrow, and I needed a wider patch to do a proper U-turn. So I kept going, scanning for a clearing. And then, it happened. All the sound stopped. Not faded, not quieted down. Stopped. Like someone hit a switch. No birds, no bugs, no wind in the leaves. Nothing. It was so silent it didn't feel natural. The only sound left was the four-wheeler's engine, and even that sounded wrong, like it didn't belong in the world anymore. I got full-body goosebumps so fast it was like my skin decided before my brain did. Something's off. I kept rolling forward slowly, and as the trail dipped down a slope, I saw it. A deer, or something shaped like one. It was standing right in the middle of the path, maybe 40 or 50 feet ahead. And I swear to you, 1 second it wasn't there, and the next second it was. This thing was huge. Not big deer huge, wrong huge. Like the proportions didn't add up. And the antlers, I don't even know how to describe them. They weren't like normal antlers. They looked tangled, like branches or roots, all spindly and twisting, like something that grew instead of something that shed and regrew. But the worst part was the eyes. They were black. Not dark brown, not shadowed. Black, like holes. And it didn't move. It just stared at me like it had all the time in the world. Then the wind started up again. Just a little. But it didn't sound normal. It sounded like the trees were whispering, or like the wind was carrying something that wasn't words but still meant something. And I got this feeling, clear as a command: leave. Don't come back. Nobody spoke. Nothing said it out loud, and was just pressed into me. You know that feeling when someone is furious at you in another language, and you don't understand the words, but you understand the message? It was like that, except it was the woods themselves telling me. And in that moment, I didn't care how crazy it sounded. I listened. I tried to turn the four-wheeler around right there on the narrow trail, and I almost dumped it. The edge dropped off into this nasty slope, and I remember the thought flashing through me: if you flip this thing, you're done. But I somehow whipped it around, slammed the throttle, and took off back the way I came. And the silence stayed. That dead, sealed silence. Like being inside a soundproof box, except I was flying through a forest that should have been roaring with life. I drove like an absolute maniac. Too fast for the turns. Too fast for the drop-offs. I wasn't thinking about safety. I was thinking about distance. I just wanted to get away from that spot, away from those eyes. Then, about halfway back, maybe, I started seeing animals. Deer, birds, a raccoon. I even saw a bear once, which I'd never seen out there before. They weren't in my way. They were off to the sides, between the trees, maybe 15 or 20 feet back. And they were all doing the same thing. Watching me. Not moving, not making noise, just staring. Even the birds were quiet, sitting in branches like decorations, heads turning as I passed. I felt their gaze like heat on my back, like the woods had 1,000 eyes, and they were all trained on me at once. And then things got even weirder. I started passing places I didn't recognize. The trail was supposed to be one straight route, no turnoffs, no side paths. But suddenly the trees looked different, thicker, older, moss hanging off them. The ground looked darker. I saw this one massive tree, covered in moss like it belonged in a fantasy movie, and I remember thinking, there's no way I wouldn't have noticed that on the way in. Even my tire tracks were gone in places, like the earth had smoothed itself back over. I had this cold panic rising in my stomach, like, did I somehow leave the trail? Did I miss something? But it didn't make sense. I couldn't have. So I just kept going. I refused to stop. I refused to turn around. I didn't want to give the woods a single extra second of me. And then, just as suddenly as it changed, the trail looked normal again. The familiar trees came back. My tracks reappeared. The world snapped back into the version I recognized, and I don't know how else to say it except it felt like I'd been pushed through a place I wasn't meant to be, and then allowed back out. Not long after that, the wind returned, and it had that same strange, almost language sound. But this time it felt different. Less warning, more like encouragement. Like, yes, keep going. You're doing the right thing. I finally reached the trail entrance where it met the road in a big Y shape. The branch I'd taken was on the right. Another trail went left, and the bottom of the Y led back toward my grandparents' place. I pulled out onto the shoulder of the road and, I swear, the silence slammed back down again. I turned my head toward the entrance. The same animal, standing just inside the trees. Only this time it moved, stomping one hoof, tossing its head like a horse, antlers shifting like a living crown of twisted wood. And again I got that message, heavy and unmistakable. "Don't come back." Then it stepped into the trees and vanished behind them. A few seconds later, like someone released the world, the birds started singing again. Bugs buzzed, leaves rustled. Normal sound rushed back in so fast it almost made me dizzy. I sat there shaking, staring at the trail like it was a doorway I'd barely escaped. On the ride back to my grandparents' place, I passed a local guy on one of those utility ATVs. He gave me a friendly wave, and I waved back, but I remember thinking, probably because I was already freaked out, that his face had this look like he knew, like he'd seen people come out of those woods before, looking the way I looked. Maybe that part was just my imagination trying to make sense of things. But everything else? I don't know. I've tried to explain it away. Hallucination, panic, some weird atmospheric thing, an overactive brain plus an unusually big deer. Except, it didn't feel like danger. That's what messes with me most. I was scared out of my mind, but I never felt like it wanted to hurt me. It felt like it wanted me gone. Like I'd wandered somewhere I had no business being, and whatever that was, it was pushing me back towards safety. Even now, in my nightmares, it's not attacking me. It's just there, watching. Sometimes it even feels like it's leading me out of the dream, like some terrifying shepherd pulling me away from a place I shouldn't be. So, yeah, that's why I don't go back. Not there. Not deep into mountains like that. Call it superstition if you want. Call it paranoia. I can live with that. All I know is I saw something on that trail, and the woods went silent around it like the world was holding its breath. And whatever it was, it didn't want me there. So, my sisters and I have this thing. We like to travel, but not in the cute cafes and matching outfits kind of way. We're the type who'll drive hours out of the way just to spend the night somewhere with a reputation. Somewhere people whisper about. Somewhere with a story. A while back, we booked a stay at this beautiful old Victorian bed and breakfast in Detroit. It was called the Hawthorne House on Ferry Street. And honestly, it was gorgeous. Not tacky, not theatrical, not the kind of place that tries too hard with fake cobwebs or creepy mannequins in the hallway. It was elegant. The kind of old building where the silence feels expensive. And also, if you're being real, the kind where you can't help wondering how many people have walked those same stairs over the last 100 years. This was early in our haunted travel era, so we didn't have any equipment. No EMF readers, no spirit box, nothing. Just curiosity and a little too much confidence. And because we were impulsive geniuses, we stopped at a big box store on the way. Target, I think, not even kidding. And we went hunting for a Ouija board like it was a normal vacation purchase. We found exactly one. It was some ridiculous pop culture themed version. Bright colors, trendy packaging, the whole thing. And we actually laughed in the aisle like, yeah, okay, this is definitely going to do absolutely nothing. Still, we bought it. And here's the part that gets me. Out of all the weird places we've stayed since then, all the creepy tours, all the "did you hear that" moments, this is the only time we ever got anything that felt like real activity on a Ouija board. Before I tell you what happened, there's something important you need to know. My sister Marisol had lost a friend just a couple months before this trip. Her friend's name was Tessa, and the loss was still raw. Like fresh wound raw. And the three of us had actually agreed on a rule. We wouldn't try to contact anyone we knew personally. Not out of fear, more out of respect. Because if it did work, that could mess with you. It could wreck you. So when we sat down that night in the room, low lamps, antique furniture, the whole vibe, we promised each other we'd keep it light. We'd ask general questions, nothing personal. We put our fingertips on the planchette, half laughing, half waiting, and then it started moving. Not dramatically at first, just a slow drift, like someone easing into the conversation. We asked, "Is anyone here with us?" Yes. We asked a few more, basic stuff, and the planchette kept answering, steady, deliberate. Then Marisol, without really meaning to, asked something like, "Who are you?" And the board started spelling, K-D. Just those two letters. And I swear to you, the air in the room changed. Because Tessa, Marisol's friend, used those exact initials online. She'd sign her posts that way. She'd even had it in her handles sometimes. It wasn't a coincidence that could be shrugged off as, "Oh, it's a common thing." It was her thing. Marisol and I just looked at each other, frozen. That kind of look where neither of you wants to be the one to say it out loud, because saying it makes it real. And here's what makes it heavier. Tessa had been sick. She'd needed a transplant, waiting, hoping, begging the universe for time. She posted videos, updates, pleas. You could feel how badly she wanted to live, not in a dramatic way, but in a human way. She wanted more mornings, more normal days, more time with the people she loved, and she never got it. While all this is happening, Marisol starts complaining her head hurts. Not a little headache, like pounding. She kept rubbing her temples, blinking hard. Then I noticed her eyes, watering. Not crying, not emotional, just leaking, like her body was reacting to something her mind hadn't caught up with yet. She looked almost startled by her own face, like she didn't recognize what was happening to her. And I hate admitting this, but we didn't stop right away. We should have. But you know how it is when you're in it. You tell yourself, just one more question, just a little longer. We also recorded the session on our phones, mostly because we thought it would be funny later, like proof of how little would happen. At one point, my phone glitched, froze up, stuttered. The recording acted weird. Nothing that would convince a skeptic, but enough that I remember it clearly because it felt off in the moment. Then the next day, we're checking the videos, and Marisol goes quiet. She's staring at her screen like it's not making sense. I'm like, "What?" And she says, really flat, "Someone watched my clips." I'm thinking, okay, sure, maybe one of her friends, maybe someone random. But then she tilts the phone toward me. And there it is, listed as a viewer on the story. Tessa. Not a repost, not an old interaction, not some memory notification. It was showing her name as having viewed the Ouija videos. Marisol was shaking. She kept repeating, "That hasn't happened, not once." She told me that since Tessa died, her name had never shown up watching anything. No views, no activity, nothing. And suddenly, on the one set of clips where we'd asked the board who was there she was, watching. Now, could there be an explanation? Maybe. Some weird app cache thing, some delayed view, a glitch in the way stories update. I get that. But still, the timing of it, the initials, the headache, the watery eyes, the way the room felt heavier the longer we kept our fingers on that planchette. And the part I can't shake is this. If there's any kind of after, any thread that lets a person tug on the living world, wouldn't it be someone like her? Someone who fought so hard to stay. Someone who didn't want to go. So yeah, I'm not saying it was a ghost, definitively. I'm not saying the board opened a portal and we chatted like it was a group text. But I am saying that night at that old inn was the first time I understood why people come away from experiences like this a little quieter than they were before. Because sometimes, whether you believe it or not, something happens that doesn't fit neatly back into the normal world. And once you've seen it, really seen it, you don't forget. So this happened in Carolina, Puerto Rico. back in late summer, a few months ago. And I'm putting sighting in air quotes right from the jump, because I honestly don't know if I caught something real or if my brain just decided to get creative. So yeah, take it like a campfire story, maybe even a satire, but I swear it felt real in the moment. That night, I walked with my dad, well, my stepdad, Raphael, to a little drugstore nearby. Nothing exciting, just one of those casual walks where you're half talking, half not. When we got close to my place again, I told him I was going to peel off for a bit and head toward the beach, since it was close enough to do on foot. I had this spot in mind, an abandoned building I'd been curious about for a while. I've always been that person, you know? The one who slows down when they pass an empty house. The one who reads old ghost stories for fun. Ever since I was a kid, I've been weirdly drawn to abandoned places and anything remotely paranormal. So I walked a couple miles east along the quieter roads until I could finally see it. This old condominium right on the ocean line. Before I went, I'd asked my stepmom Iris, she's lived in Puerto Rico her whole life, what the deal was with it. She told me it basically got wrecked and left behind after Hurricane Maria. And because it sits right against the water, it took a beating worse than most buildings. When I got there, it looked exactly like something the island had just given up on. The whole place was wrapped in barbed wire, and there were no trespassing signs everywhere, like they were trying to shout you away. The main gate was chained up with this thick, serious lock. Like they weren't just discouraging people, they were daring them to try. But what really threw me? The entrance area felt weirdly cold. And I don't mean, ooh, spooky cold. I mean like, genuinely out of place cold. The air around the gate felt like it belonged to a different night entirely. Puerto Rico doesn't do that. Not like that. Also, cats. Everywhere. Like the place had become some kind of stray cat kingdom. I could hear them and see them moving through gaps in the fencing. And the smell. Man, the smell was brutal. Cat pee, trash, damp rot. Like the building had been marinating in abandonment for years. Still, I wanted in so bad. I found this narrow little opening where the fence didn't meet the wall cleanly, and I squeezed through, scraping my arm a bit in the process. But getting through that gap didn't put me inside the building. It just got me into this cramped, useless strip of space between barriers. So I start scanning, circling, looking for anything. A loose panel, a busted door, a gap big enough to slip through. Nothing. Nothing at all. I remember just standing there and whisper cussing like, seriously? This is it? And I felt stupid for even trying, but mostly I was just annoyed. Not devastated, just disappointed. Like the night hadn't delivered on what I wanted it to be. So I sat down on the sand a short distance away and just stared at the building for a minute. It looked bare and unfinished, like it never even fully became what it was supposed to be. Like it was stuck halfway between being built and being erased. By then, it was getting late, past midnight, and I realized I should probably head home. Before I left, I pulled out my phone and took a few clear photos with the flash, just because. Proof I'd been there. Something to look back on. I got home, fell into my bed, and just scrolled around for a while. Couldn't sleep right away. And that's when I opened the photos again. I'm zooming in, mostly out of boredom, and I noticed something at the top edge of one of the walls. Just something that didn't match the shape of the concrete. Like a bump, a curve, a presence. So I zoom in more, and what I swear I saw, what it looked like, was a head. Not a normal head, not like some guy peeking over a wall. It looked like the head of a dead woman. And I know how dramatic that sounds, believe me, but the way it registered in my brain was instant. Like pale skin, patchy hair, or almost no hair, and those empty-looking eyes. like something that had been in water too long, like a body that wasn't supposed to be seen. The weirdest part wasn't even the image itself. The weirdest part was realizing I hadn't seen anything while I was standing there in person. Because I'm usually observant. I'm the type that notices small details. I notice when somebody's following too close, or when a window is open that shouldn't be. But that night, in real life, nothing. Just a cold entrance, a bunch of cats, and a locked gate. It didn't feel like a "holy shit, I'm haunted" moment. It felt more like a slow, crawling kind of unsettled. Like your stomach drops, but quietly. Like you're not scared of being attacked. You're just bothered by the idea that something might have been there with you, and you didn't clock it. So yeah, that's my little sighting. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was a shadow and my brain filled in the blanks. Maybe it was a trick of flash and angles and grime. I honestly couldn't tell you. But I'll say this. I slept with my phone face down after that, just in case I didn't feel like seeing anything else staring back at me. So, last fall, my partner Evan and I were tucked away in this quiet little cabin outside Red River Gorge in Kentucky. One of those places where the trees feel like they go on forever, and the night sky is so sharp it almost looks fake. We couldn't sleep, so we grabbed a blanket and went out to stargaze. It had to be somewhere around 2 a.m., that deep, late hour where everything feels muted, like the world is holding its breath. And that's when I saw it. Right out in front of us, maybe 12 feet away, hovering at about the height of a low tree branch, this thing appeared. I still hate calling it an object because it didn't feel like one. It was more like a presence, like something that simply decided to be there. It looked like a glowing orb, about the size of a basketball, maybe a little bigger. And the color, God, the color, was this electric teal blue, almost like the brightest part of a flame, but smooth and round. Not blinking, not pulsing like a flashlight, just glowing intensely. I remember my brain trying to catch up, like, is that a drone? A reflection? Am I tired? But my body knew before my mind did, because I started lifting my hand to point and say, Evan, what is that? And right as I'm about to speak, Evan does this totally instinctive thing. He snaps his headlamp on and aims it straight at the orb. The second the light hit it, it shot up and over us so fast it was like watching a streak of light in reverse. I actually ducked, like I thought it might hit us. And when I spun around to track it, nothing. Gone. No fading, no drifting away. Just not there anymore. From appearing to disappearing, it was maybe 4 seconds, 5 at the most. And here's the part that still messes with me. Evan swears he never saw the orb sitting in front of us. Not the glow, not the shape, not the color. Nothing. He only saw something move overhead when the light went on. And he said it didn't look teal or blue to him. He described it more like a dull white blur, like motion without detail. I kept asking him, why did you turn the light on like that? Because it was so immediate, like a reflex. And he just looked at me, kind of shaken, and said, I don't know. I didn't even think. I just did it. Like his body reacted to something his eyes didn't fully register. And then, because the night apparently wasn't done with us, there were all these little details that clicked into place afterward. For one, there'd been this scrappy little tabby cat hanging around outside with us. It had been sitting near my feet for hours, like it had claimed us. We'd even turned the light on earlier a couple of times, looking for something we dropped, and the cat didn't bolt or even flinch much. It just kept hanging out like, yeah, whatever. But after the orb happened, I remember looking down because I suddenly wanted something familiar in that moment. And the cat was gone. Not slowly wandering off, just gone, like it evaporated. Then, maybe a minute or two later, we heard coyotes, a whole pack, lighting up the woods nearby. Not far, close enough that it raised the hair on my arms. It wasn't just a couple yips in the distance either. It was chaotic, like they'd all decided to start screaming at the same time. And I'm not saying the coyotes were connected, but I will say it made the whole thing feel charged, like the woods noticed something too. There's one more layer to it, and I don't tell everyone this part because it makes it sound like I'm trying to turn it into something meaningful, when really I'm just trying to be honest about what was going on in my life. I don't know if I believe that. I really don't. But I also can't ignore how it felt. Not scary, exactly. More like the feeling you get when you realize you're not alone, even though you thought you were. We went back inside not long after, mostly because neither of us could settle into the quiet again. And even now, when I try to explain it, I always end up back at the same conclusion. Whatever it wasn't normal. And it happened so fast that sometimes I wonder if it even makes sense that two people can stand in the same spot, in the same moment, and see two completely different versions of it. Okay, so picture this. My roommate Maya and I have been house hunting for weeks, right? Just scrolling and scrolling until everything starts to blur together. And then there's this one listing that kept popping up, like it had a grudge. Every time we opened the app, boom, there it was again. Same photos, same two perfect angles, like it was insisting. Neither of us even loved it, not really. We both had that quiet little, something's weird feeling about it, but eventually we're like, fine, we'll just tour it and get it out of our system. So we meet our realtor, Evan, and pull up to the place. Outside, it's honestly kind of sad. The garage is nothing special, paint peeling in spots, and the boards along the exterior looked soft and rotted, like they'd been soaking up years of rain. Not exactly dream home vibes. And then, as we're walking around toward the front again, I notice the back door is just wide open. Like, open. Not cracked, not unlatched, just standing there, welcoming anyone off the street. And I remember thinking, that can't be right, because anyone could wander in. Someone could literally be living in there and we wouldn't know. But the second I saw that open door, I got this sudden prickly feeling, like the air behind me had eyes. You know when you're not seeing anything, but your body is acting like you are? That. Still, we're already there. Evan made time for the showing, so we go inside. Upstairs is fine. It's cute, I'll give it that. Clean enough. But it's also tiny. Like, the living room is basically a suggestion. You'd have to choose between having a couch or walking through the space like a normal person. But none of that was the part that stuck with me. We get to this little hallway behind the kitchen. On one side is the back door, still creeping me out. And on the other side, there's just an open doorway leading to basement stairs. No door. No way to close it off. Just stairs down into a darker space. And the second I looked toward it, my entire body went cold. I swear to you, the hair on the back of my neck lifted. I didn't even want to look down. Not because it was scary looking, because it felt like something down there noticed me noticing it. Maya looks at me and goes, really quietly, "You feel it too?" And I didn't even have to ask what she meant. Because yes, absolutely yes. We start down the stairs anyway, like we're stepping into someone else's house without permission. And I try to make a joke out loud because I'm trying not to panic. I said something like, "Okay, listen, please don't mess with me. I'm just here to look around." Evan did this tight little laugh, but I could tell he didn't love being down there either. At the bottom, the air felt heavy, oppressive, like it was pressing against my chest. But after a minute, that crushing feeling faded a bit. like whatever it was pulled back. And then there was a different feeling. Still watched, still not alone, but this time it felt scared. Not me scared, something else. Like the energy of a frightened kid hiding in a corner, hoping you won't see them. We looked around anyway. There was a small bathroom down there, and 2 bedrooms that felt more like storage rooms. Everything was dim and kind of stale, but nothing was obviously wrong. Until we got to the closet in the second room. And then, this is the part that makes me feel crazy even saying it. I just left the room. Like I was pulled out. I walked straight across the basement living area toward this weird little cutout space. It was tiny, like a cramped nook, and there was this partial section of old concrete wall, like part of something original that had been left behind. The second I got close to it, I felt this wave of dread so intense I almost started crying on the spot. My eyes burned, my throat tightened. It was like grief hit me out of nowhere, the kind you feel before you even understand what you're grieving. And then the oppressive feeling came back, full force. Not just heavy, angry. It didn't have a voice, but it felt like being screamed at in your bones. Like, get out of here. I didn't think, I didn't breathe. I just turned and ran up the stairs so fast I almost tripped. The second I got back upstairs, it was like I'd broken the surface of water. Relief. Normal air. My heart was going so hard it hurt. Maya and Evan followed, both acting like they didn't want to admit what had just happened. We even went up to this little loft area near the attic, and weirdly, it felt comfortable up there. Almost cozy. Like, if the rest of the house felt off, that space didn't. It felt safe. But then we turned to go back down. Maya flipped the light switch to turn the loft lights off, and they flickered. Then everything went dark, except the single bulb right above her. She flipped the switch back on. Nothing changed. Flipped it off again. Still nothing. That one light stayed on like it was glued to her. We went back down to the main floor, and Evan asked what we thought, doing his best real estate professional voice. But Maya wouldn't stop glancing toward the basement hallway, like she was waiting for something to come walking out. We got outside and didn't even need to discuss it. We were done. Hard no. In the car, once the doors shut and it was just us, I asked Maya if she was okay. She stared straight ahead and said, "It followed us after the basement, like all through the house, like it didn't want us to forget it was there." And then she hit me with this, super casually, like she was talking about the weather. Apparently when I walked away from the closet and went toward that concrete wall, I'd whispered, "Don't worry, I'll find you." I do not remember saying that, not even a little. And here's where it gets worse. Ever since that tour, I've been having nightmares. Not once in a while, almost every night. I'm trapped in that corner by the concrete. It's pitch black. I can't move. I'm screaming until my throat feels shredded, and it never stops. The screaming doesn't even feel like it's coming from me. It's like I'm inside someone else's terror. And there's pain, like deep, wrong pain. Like something happened there that shouldn't have happened to anyone. I wake up shaking, and the feeling clings to me for hours. And I can't stop thinking, if something terrible happened in that house, why do my dreams feel like I'm the one it happened to? Why does it feel so personal, like I'm remembering something that isn't mine? So, I want to tell you something I've been sitting with, because I honestly can't decide if I'm overthinking it or if I've been too quick to dismiss what's happening. I work nights in hotels, and I've worked in enough of them to know every building has its quirks. Pipes knocking, elevators humming, Old wiring doing old wiring things. Normally, I'm the first person to roll my eyes at a "this place is haunted" comment. But lately, it's been harder to keep that stance. The first place was a newer hotel I started at earlier this year. The building itself isn't ancient, put up around the late 2000s, but the land it sits on has history. Before this hotel, there used to be this big, ornate entertainment venue on the plot. Think velvet curtains, balcony seating, that kind of place. Then later it got turned into a loud, messy club, and eventually the whole thing was torn down. When I started, coworkers told me the usual stories. Shadowy figures, strange noises, weird feelings. I nodded along, didn't really take it on. I'm pretty sensitive to atmosphere, like if a space feels heavy or emotionally full, I notice. But I wasn't picking up anything like that. Except, there were two spots I couldn't explain. Down on the lower level, there's this pocket of cold that just sits there, like someone left a freezer door open inside the walls. And in that same area, a couple of TVs in nearby rooms have this habit of switching on for no good reason. Directly above that, on the ground floor, I sometimes get this strange sensation, like the air warps for a second. The best way I can describe it is an audio wobble, like I've dipped my head underwater and sound gets thick and muffled, then it snaps back. Still, no emotional signature. So I told myself, wiring, drafts, old tech. Weird, but not spooky. Then last week happened. I was watching the security monitors with a coworker. His name's Mateo. And I caught this black shape glide across one of the camera feeds. Not like a person walking, not like a shadow from headlights, not like the usual compression glitch you see on cheap cameras. It moved with purpose, and it had weight to it, if that makes sense. Mateo went to check the camera, thought maybe an insect on the lens or something stuck near it. He's standing right there, looking at it with his own eyes, and while he's inspecting it, the shape sweeps across the feed again. Only there's nothing there. No bug, no debris, no explanation. So we're standing there after, both of us kind of trying to laugh it off, and Mateo asks me, very seriously, if I think the place is haunted. And I'm basically like, honestly, I don't feel anything. I've noticed some odd stuff, but nothing that feels intelligent. I'm mid-sentence saying that, and one of the handheld radios on the desk beside him suddenly erupts into this violent, roaring static. It wasn't being touched. It wasn't knocked. It just exploded with noise. I grabbed it, flipped it off, and that's when Mateo sucked in a sharp breath and went, "What the hell? My shoulder." He swore it felt like someone dragged nails across him. And right there, as he's saying it, a red mark appears on the exact spot. Not a huge wound, more like a fresh scratch line, like irritated skin. Except there was no way he did it himself in that moment. We both just stared at it like, are you kidding me? And then, because apparently the universe loves timing, within 2 days, a long-stay guest calls down to the desk, totally shaken, asking if she can move rooms. She had no idea about any of this, by the way. No one had said a word to her. She sounded embarrassed even saying it, like she expected me to judge her. But she was so disturbed she couldn't bring herself to go back in that room alone to grab her things. Like her body just refused. So that was the first hotel. And I know how it sounds. I do. Even telling you, I can hear the "it's faulty plumbing and a shaky table" argument. I'm still trying to hang on to that. But then there's the second hotel. This one is the opposite. Tiny, old. The kind of place where the walls have seen entire lifetimes come and go. The main building dates back centuries, like really old, and only has a handful of guest rooms. During night shifts, I'm basically alone in the building except for sleeping guests. In a place that old, creaks and groans are normal. Floorboards talk. Radiators hiss. Wind finds gaps. Usually, I'm great at filing all that into the old building category. But one night, during a 2 a.m. security walk, I was down in the basement corridors. Narrow halls, stone walls, that slightly damp smell. And as I passed one section, I felt something grip my wrist. Not a brush, not a chill, a grip. Like the exact sensation of a hand catching you to stop you walking away. I froze, pulled my arm back, and there was nothing there. And I remember standing still for a second, feeling my skin crawl. And then I did something I've never really done seriously before. I spoke out loud, not aggressively, just firmly. I said something like, "No, you don't get to do that. I'm not okay with you touching me." And I left it at that. After that, the building stayed weird, but manageable. Cold spots in certain rooms. One function room upstairs that I avoided because it made me feel watched the second I stepped inside. The occasional whisper-like sound when no one was nearby. Little movements in the corner of my vision. Unpleasant, but not panic-inducing. Until Sunday night. I was sitting in the foyer doing emails, just quietly existing, when around 12:30 a.m. I heard, and felt, a heavy thud from upstairs where the function rooms are. It was the kind of sound that hits your chest, like something substantial dropped or slammed. And the moment it happened, everything started failing at once. The phones lost power. The internet died. The whole place went weirdly still, like it was holding its breath. I went upstairs to check, and I found 3 chairs knocked over, stacked ones, tipped onto their sides. I can't swear they weren't already like that, but the timing made my stomach twist. And while I was standing there, I got this wave of dread so sharp it felt chemical. Goosebumps, tight throat, that instinctive "leave now" signal. I checked the main circuit breakers. Nothing had tripped. So I went down to the basement because I could hear this emergency tone coming from the server room, like a warning beep, urgent and insistent. And when I got in there, I found the problem. The breaker for the server room had blown. Not tripped, blown. It was on its own isolated system, separate from the rest of the building's electrics, and it wouldn't reset. Dead. Fried. And from that point on, the whole night felt wrong. Not old building wrong. Something else. There were sounds of movement that didn't match settling wood or pipes. It felt like the air was pressing in on me. Being inside made me nauseous. I spent most of my shift standing at the open front doors, half inside, half out, because the moment I stepped fully into the building, my body reacted like I was somewhere I shouldn't be. Like my skin was rejecting the space. So I went down there, because I had to go inside anyway to do the early morning stuff, and I held up my phone to take the picture. And my camera suddenly switched into macro mode automatically. Now, if you've ever used a phone that does that, you know it only kicks in when the camera thinks something is extremely close to the lens. Like you're inches away from an object. But there was nothing near it. Nothing. Empty corridor. Clear view. Just the macro settings snapping on, like my phone detected something right in front of it that I couldn't see. That was the final straw for me. I finished what I absolutely had to, and the second I could leave, I left. And I'm not going to lie to you. I'm hesitant about going back. Because here's the thing. I'm not looking for ghosts. I'm not chasing a story. If anything, I've been trying hard to explain it all away. But when you've got 2 separate places, 2 separate sets of incidents, and your body is reacting before your brain can even make excuses, it starts to feel less like coincidence. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Tell me what you think, because I genuinely don't know if I'm finally noticing things everyone else has been seeing all along, or if something has decided it wants to be noticed. Okay, so I've had a lot of weird experiences in my life, but this one still sits in my chest when I think about it. When I was about 8 or 9, I used to spend summers at my nanny's house, a small, quiet town right on the edge of the desert. The kind of place where nights feel extra wide and still, like the whole world is holding its breath. Her house was one of those older South Asian homes, simple, single story, with a big open courtyard. In the hottest months, everyone would drag out the woven beds, charpais, and sleep outside under the stars because it was cooler than being inside. There was a covered stairway that led up to the roof, and from the courtyard, if someone was standing up there, you could spot them pretty easily. Now, my nanny used to casually say stuff like, "Don't go in that front sitting room, there's something there." And I'd always roll my eyes in my head because I was convinced it was just an adult trick to keep kids from messing up the nice room. But then, one night, we were all sleeping outside like usual. I was lying on my charpai, staring up at the sky, trying to force myself to get sleepy. And out of nowhere, I got that feeling, like you're being watched. You know that feeling where your skin reacts before your brain catches up? I turned my head toward the roof, and I saw someone. A figure standing there. It was too to see details, no face, no clothes, nothing clear like that. But I could tell it was shaped like a man. My stomach dropped immediately, because I could also see the rest of my family in the courtyard, all asleep. Nobody was missing. Nobody could have quietly gotten up there without someone noticing. I just stared, and then I noticed the worst part. It didn't look complete. Like the body seemed to end too early, around the shoulders. Almost like the head just wasn't there at all. Not even a silhouette of one. Just this still, upright presence where a person shouldn't be able to stand and look normal. I remember my heart pounding so hard it felt loud. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I just stared, frozen, trying to make my eyes fix what they were seeing. Like if I blinked enough, it would turn into something ordinary. It didn't. After what felt like forever, I got so uncomfortable I slowly rolled onto my side, facing the big front gate instead, like I could escape it just by not looking. And I started doing that kid thing where you bargain with reality. It's nothing. It's a shadow. It's your imagination. Just go to sleep. And somehow, I did. I didn't tell anyone the next day. Not my mom, not my cousins, nobody. I think part of me was scared they'd laugh, and part of me was scared they wouldn't. Years later, like way later, I found out I wasn't the only one. Almost everyone who stayed in that house had seen something at some point. And the detail that made my blood run cold, other people had noticed it too. That it was headless. I hadn't even known that was a thing until it came up in conversation one day, and I just sat there thinking, so I didn't imagine it. Here's the part that still messes with me. Nobody described it like it was evil. My mom said she never felt that heavy, sick fear people usually talk about with negative spirits. She said it felt watchful, like it was there, but not trying to harm anyone. My nanny, though, she went back and forth. For a while, she got convinced it had bad intentions, and she tried to do this fire ritual, kind of like a cleansing ceremony, to drive it out. But apparently, it went horribly wrong. Not in a dramatic movie way, more in a terrifying, real way. She was older and heavy, and that night she fell hard off her charpai, hit her head badly, and it turned into this whole emergency. It genuinely could have killed her. As for me, I never saw it again. But even now, whenever I visit that house, someone else lives there now, and my nanny is gone, I still catch myself doing it. Every time the courtyard gets quiet, every time the night feels that same desert-still way, I look up toward the roof, not because I want to prove anything anymore, just because a part of me wants one last glimpse. One last confirmation that what I saw as a kid was real. And in our family, we had a name for it. A headless djinn, the one that watches. To this day, I still look up, hoping I'll see the watcher on the roof again. Hey, so there are a few things from when I was a kid that still sit heavy with me, even now. I'm in my late 20s, and I honestly don't know what to do with them. When I was little, I used to see stuff, weird stuff, sometimes scary stuff, and every time I tried to explain it, my mom, her name's Denise, would brush it off with the same line. You've just got a big imagination. After a while, I learned what got me comfort and what got me dismissed, so I stopped talking about it. But I didn't stop seeing it. I've always had this feeling, like there's another layer to reality that not everyone picks up on. And maybe when you're younger, it's louder. And then as you get older, the volume turns down. For me, it never really did. I've had this constant sense of being watched, like something's tracking me. Sometimes I even wonder if something attached itself to me early on and never left. And the nightmares? Those have been there for as long as I can remember. I'd wake up sobbing, screaming, completely drenched in fear. The weird part is, I taught myself how to steer my dreams. Like, I could tell myself, this isn't real. I could change the scene, wake myself up, fight back. But every once in a while, I'd get stuck in one where I didn't realize it was a dream, and that's the worst feeling in the world. Like being trapped. Anyway, there were a lot of moments over the years, but a few stand out so clearly it's like they're stamped into me. One of the earliest ones happened when I was watching TV in my mom's bedroom. I was sprawled out on the carpet, just being a kid, and behind me in the corner she had this old, round, standing mirror. One of those heavy ones that feels like it belongs in another era. I don't know why, but I got this sudden urge to look back at it. Like something pulled my attention. And in the mirror, I saw a woman. She looked like my mom, but wrong. Like a drained, sick version of her. Her skin had this grayish tint. Her face was too sharp, cheekbones sticking out like they wanted to cut through her skin. Her eyes were sunken and dark, and her hair was short and messy, almost wet-looking, like she'd just been dragged out of someplace cold. She wore this thin white gown that hung off her like it didn't belong to her body, and she was staring straight at me. Not looking past me, not floating around the room, at me. Like she knew I'd turned around. Like she'd been waiting for me to notice. My whole body went tight, like I couldn't breathe, and before I could even make a sound, my mom walked into the room. I snapped my head toward her, relief, confusion, panic, all at once, and then I looked back at the mirror, and the woman was gone. Years later, my mom got a new dog, sweet little thing, except for one detail. The dog absolutely hated that mirror. Like hated it. Barking, growling, backing away like it was cornered. Eventually, Denise started keeping the mirror covered because it would set the dog off so badly. That didn't make me feel better. It made me feel validated in the worst way. Because I saw that same woman again. This time, it was outside. I was older, and I remember looking out into the yard and seeing her hanging from a noose in one of the tall trees. Just there. Pale gown, thin body, that same wrongness. Like the image had been saved somewhere in the world and replayed for me. I still get a sick chill thinking about it. Then there was the thing in my room, and I saw hands appear at the top of the ladder. Just two hands, slowly curling over the bed rail like someone was climbing up. My brain tried to make it logical for half a second, like, Dad? Mom? One of my siblings? but the way it moved didn't feel human. It was too smooth, too deliberate, like it wanted me to watch. Then a head rose up. But it wasn't a normal head. The whole figure was black, solid black, like a shadow that forgot it needed a person to cast it. No facial features, no eyes, no mouth, nothing. And I still felt it looking at me. That's what scares me the most. When something has no face, but you know, deep in your bones, you've been seen. I remember blurting into the phone, "Maya, it's looking right at me." My voice sounded strange to even me, like it didn't belong in my throat. And then it was just gone. Years later, my youngest sister Talia moved into that room after I left for college. And one day, out of nowhere, she told me she used to see something too. The same shadowy thing, she said, squatting on top of a dresser in the corner like it was perched there, waiting. What messed me up is that neither of us had talked about it for years. We only brought it up recently, and when we realized we'd seen the same thing, we both just went quiet. Because what do you even say to that? Another one that still messes with me. Honestly, it's why I still get tense in showers sometimes. I was showering and there were two curtains. One was that clearish, foggy plastic that lets in light, and the other was thick and dark so you couldn't see through it at all. I'd pulled the dark curtain to the side because I liked the light coming in. It made me feel less closed in. And then, from behind where the dark curtain was bunched up, a hand reached out. Not a whole arm, just a hand, pressing against the clear curtain from the outside like it was testing it, like it was checking how thin the barrier was between us. I froze for half a second, then I panicked, punched the curtain, yanked it aside, stumbled out of the tub so fast I nearly fell. No one was there. The bathroom door was closed. The house was quiet. I checked behind the curtain like a maniac, even though there was nowhere a person could hide. But the feeling stayed, like I'd just caught something playing with me, and it didn't like being caught. And then there's this last kind of thing, less dramatic but almost creepier because it was so physical. I used to freeze on the basement stairs, or in the doorway of my bedroom. It wasn't like I heard anything or saw something. It was more like I'd hit an invisible wall, like my body just refused to go forward. Every nerve would light up screaming, "Don't go that way." So I'd turn around and wander somewhere else and try again later, like I could sneak around whatever it was. Of course, as a kid, that just got me yelled at, especially if I was supposed to take laundry down and I'd get stuck halfway and couldn't explain why without sounding ridiculous. And honestly, there were plenty of other things too. Footsteps when I was home alone. My name being whispered, soft, close, right by my ear. That feeling of someone standing behind me when nothing is there. Feeling brushed or touched when no one could possibly be near me. And it didn't only happen at my parents' house. It happened at relatives' houses, in hotels, in places I'd never been before. Like it wasn't tied to a building, which is the part that keeps me thinking. Because, what am I supposed to make of all this? I don't know. I genuinely don't. I just know those moments still feel too sharp to be nothing, and I'm tired of pretending they were. So, this takes me way back to 5th grade. My elementary school had this program for kids who qualified for free lunch. Basically the school's way of making sure money didn't stop anyone from having a real summer. We could pick from a handful of week-long camps, and the second I saw there was a horse camp option, I was done. I didn't even look at the others. I wish I could remember the exact name of the place. In my head it's somewhere up north, like northern Minnesota, maybe near the lake country. But it could have been Wisconsin. That whole area kind of blends together in my memory. What I do remember is the smell. Hay, pine trees, and that warm, dusty barn scent that gets into your clothes and never really leaves. When we got there, they paired each of us with a horse for the week. Not just riding, like you were responsible for grooming, feeding, cleaning tack, all of it. I was obsessed. I felt like I'd been given my own little world. A few days in, maybe day 3, this girl I'd started hanging out with, her name was Marisol, had the worst day ever. Her horse got something stuck in its hoof, and the staff said they'd have to switch her to a different horse while hers was being treated. And I know that probably sounds small to an adult, but if you've ever been a kid and gotten attached to an animal like that, it was huge. She cried all day, like real throat-hurting sobs. She kept saying she didn't want a replacement. She wanted her horse, and she was terrified something bad would happen to it. I tried so hard to comfort her. I sat with her during breaks, told her horse was going to be okay, tried to make her laugh. But nothing was really getting through. By nighttime, she was just exhausted from crying, and she went to bed early. The cabin we stayed in was basically one big room full of bunk beds, like a whole row of them, maybe a dozen sets, all packed in. Most of them were taken. I slept on a top bunk near the middle, and Marisol was across from me on the bottom bunk. Lights out was at 10. The counselors did that quiet sweep, the room settled, and eventually you could hear the normal sounds, sniffling, whispers fading, somebody's bed creaking, then that heavy quiet when everyone starts drifting off. But I've always been a bad Cessy P, even as a kid. So I'm lying there, staring at the ceiling, shifting around in my sleeping bag, and I just happened to look down toward Marisol's bunk. And that's when I saw him. There was a figure standing right beside her bed, on her left side. Not like a person you could make out. No clothes details, no skin, nothing. It was solid black, like someone had cut the shape out of darkness. But the outline was clear. The thing I remember most is the hat, a wide, cowboyish brim. And where the face should have been, there were these 2 small pale dots, like eyes, but not glowing, just there. The rest of it went straight down, like it had a long coat or something that draped all the way to the floor. It was leaning slightly, almost like it was bending toward her, watching her. My whole body went cold. I swear my stomach dropped so hard it felt like I might actually be sick. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I just yanked my sleeping bag up over my head even though it was hot in that cabin, and I held it tight around my face like that thin layer of fabric could somehow protect me. I was terrified that if I looked again, it would notice me. Like the second I acknowledged it, it could turn and do something. So I just stayed there, curled up, silently crying, and I did the only thing my kid brain could think to do. I whispered little songs to myself, like old nursery rhymes, anything familiar, over and over, until I eventually passed out under that sleeping bag like it was a shield. But here's the thing. Years later, when I got older and started hearing about this phenomenon people call the Hat Man, I felt my blood run cold all over again. Because every drawing, every description, tall, dark figure, brimmed hat, shadow person vibe, it was too close, too accurate. It looked like what I saw, and weirdly, I don't feel angry about it anymore. I don't even feel the same kind of fear. I still remember the terror of not understanding what I was seeing, because as a kid, it felt like something impossible had stepped into the room. But part of me wonders if it wasn't there to hurt anyone. I wonder if it was there because Marisol was so broken up that day, like watching over her. Not comforting exactly, but present, observing, guarding. I know that sounds strange, but the memory has taken on this odd warmth over time, like it wasn't malicious, just intense. It's still one of the clearest paranormal moments of my life, and I'm skeptical about plenty of other weird things I've experienced. Because sure, sometimes there's a simple explanation. Shadows, sleepiness, your brain filling in gaps. But that night, I can't shake it. I know what I saw. I know how real the fear felt in my body, and I still wonder what it meant. So, yeah, that's my question, honestly. Have you ever seen him? Or heard more about what it means when people do? So, my parents split up when I was about 8. Mom got custody, so it was mostly just me and her for most of my childhood. A few years later, when I was in elementary school, my mom remarried, and my stepdad's job moved us out to the outskirts of Houston, Texas. We landed in this clean, newer neighborhood. Fresh paint, new sidewalks, that whole still smells like lumber vibe. And I should say up front, I've always been the kind of person who believes there's something out there. Spirits, energy, whatever you want to call it. My mom likes to say our family has sensitive women in it, like a long line of people who just know things. I don't know if I buy all of it, but I also don't not buy it, you know? Here's the thing though, that house never felt scary at first, not even a little. If I got spooked, it was regular kid stuff. Dark hallway, too much imagination, scary movie trailer at the wrong time. The house itself felt normal, safe. Then years went by. I was a teenager by the time this happened, maybe 2018. Honestly, the timeline is fuzzy, but I remember the feeling of it like it was yesterday. My stepdad, Mark, I'll call him, started getting involved with a motorcycle club. It wasn't just a casual hangout situation either. They'd meet at this little shed-like clubhouse they set up in the backyard. Some weekends it was loud, there was drinking, a lot of guys coming and going, engines, laughter, all of it. One night, after one of those get-togethers, something went wrong. A member, his name was Jesse, I'll call him, left when he absolutely shouldn't have. He was drunk, and from what I was told later, he ended up in a high-speed chase and crashed. He died before help even got there. I woke up the next morning and I could tell immediately something was off. Mark was usually this tough, quiet, don't mess with me kind of guy, but that day he looked wrecked, like his whole personality had been turned down to a low, trembling volume. Jesse meant a lot to him, even to my mom, Lena, who never really loved the whole biker club thing. She cared about Jesse as a person, even if she hated the lifestyle. And after that, the house changed. Not in a dramatic movie way, not like walls bleeding or anything, just the air, the ambiance. It felt like the house had absorbed something heavy, like grief got trapped in the drywall. It was disorienting, because I'd lived there for years, and suddenly, it didn't feel like my house anymore. Little things started happening first. Stuff not where it should be. Strange noises, soft thumps, a shuffle, like someone shifting their weight in a room that was empty. Things you can brush off, until you have enough of them that you stop brushing. The first thing that really got me, was one night when Mark told me to take the trash out. I hated going outside at night. Always have. I could do it, but every step felt like I was walking into the mouth of something. So I'm out there, speed walking down the driveway, trash bag in hand, trying to finish in record time. And as I'm passing my mom's pickup, this big silver Ford, I hear the unmistakable click of it unlocking. Then the headlights flash on. Cabin light too. The whole driveway lights up like a stage. And there's nobody inside the truck. Nobody near it. Just me, standing there frozen with a trash bag like an idiot. I threw the trash in the bin and sprinted back inside so fast I nearly slipped on the tile. My first thought was, Mark is messing with me. Because that's the kind of thing he would do. Act like he's too cool for pranks, but secretly loves scaring people. He looks genuinely confused, like, what are you talking about? And then he points, calm as anything, to this small table by the front door. and sitting right there is the key fob, like it had been there the whole time. Not tossed, not hidden, just placed neatly. And the layout of the house mattered, because I knew there wasn't enough time for him to slip over, grab it, peek through the blinds, unlock the truck, run back, set it down perfectly, and get back into his chair before I came in. It didn't make sense. At the time, nobody really believed me. Years later, I told my mom again, and she was like, "No, I remember that. Mark wasn't messing with you." Which somehow made it worse, honestly. Then, about a year after that, my mom had an experience that still gives her chills. I was working late that night, closing shift, so it was just Lena and Mark at home watching TV. There's this hallway that branches off from the living room toward the garage and the main bedroom. My mom had it decorated with those cheerful, Pinterest-style canvases, sweet little phrases about family and gratitude and all that. She told me she was on the couch, watching the show, and she glanced down the hallway. And one of the canvases lifted. Not fell, not slid. Lifted off the wall like someone had grabbed it from behind. It hung there, just suspended in the air, for a second or two, perfectly still. And then it dropped straight down like gravity suddenly remembered it existed. My mom said she just stared, waiting for some explanation to appear, like a string or a draft or something. Nothing. And of course, I wasn't there. I still feel robbed that I missed it. The last thing that happened to me in that house was years later, when I'd already graduated and came home for Thanksgiving. I'd been driving all morning, felt gross, and went straight to the bathroom to shower. I remember this clearly because it was such a simple setup. I put my clean clothes on the closed toilet lid. I set my phone on the counter next to the sink. And my phone had this super grippy rubber case, one of those cases that practically velcros itself to your hand. It didn't slide easily on anything, which is important. I took off my dirty clothes and dropped them in a little pile under the sink area, kind of tucked beneath the counter. Then I got in the shower. A minute or two in, I heard it. That sharp little slap and thud sound of a phone hitting the floor. I pulled the curtain back and looked. My phone wasn't on the counter anymore. At first, I tried to be rational. I was like, okay, maybe I set it too close to the edge. But I knew I didn't. I'm weird about my phone. I don't balance it on edges. So I finish up, dry off, get dressed, and start looking. I check the floor, under the counter, around the toilet. Nothing. And then I look at the pile of dirty clothes under the sink. And my phone is under them. Like, under them. Not next to them. Not touching the side. Fully underneath, buried under several pieces of clothing. And I just stood there for a second, staring, because there was no version of physics where my grippy cased phone falls off a counter, bounces just right, and then somehow wriggles itself under a whole pile like it's trying to hide. My mom and I tried to recreate it later, because of course we did, and we couldn't. Not even close. Eventually, my mom sold that house. I've had a couple small weird moments in the years since, but nothing like what happened there. But I do know it felt like someone was around. And honestly, if something of him is still there, I hope it's quiet now. I hope it's peaceful. And I hope the people living there today, if they ever notice anything, feel more curious than afraid. Because whatever it was, it never felt evil. Just present. So, I kind of did this to myself. I went down a rabbit hole one night. Paranormal threads, first-hand accounts, all of it. And I got this itch like, fine, I should probably add mine too. And even saying that out loud makes me feel ridiculous, because I'm one of those people whose brain immediately tries to rescue me with logic. Like, okay, Cool story, but where's the evidence? My background's in philosophy, so the skeptical, empirical voice in my head is always hovering, ready to slap a natural explanation sticker on everything. But at the same time, I don't know, some stuff sticks to you, and maybe putting it out there helps. Maybe somebody hears it and goes, "Oh, yeah, I know what that is." Or maybe it just helps to say it plainly instead of carrying it around like some embarrassing secret. Alright, I've moved a bunch, so I'll go in order, by place, by time. And I'm starting with the one that shaped all the others. The fixer-upper house, late 90s to mid-2000s. We moved into this house when I was basically a newborn. My dad was a physician, and we landed in this small Midwest town that had this old French settler history. One of those places where the streets feel quieter than they should. The house was too much house. Dead center of town, and it was the biggest place on the block by a mile. Not ancient by European standards, but for where we were, it was old. Like generations and weird remodels layered on top of each other old. Later I found out it was well over a century. My mom nicknamed it the fixer-upper because we were constantly repairing something. Roof stuff, pipes, a door that never sat right. Always a project. But even as a kid, I had this feeling she was covering. Like that name was a joke you could laugh at instead of saying, "This place scares me." Here's the strange part. I can't point to a first incident. We moved in when I was too young to remember a before. So my earliest awareness of life already included this constant background sensation of being watched. And I learned this little survival habit that still makes me cringe to admit. If I had to go down a hallway alone, I wouldn't look up. I'd do this tunnel vision thing, eyes on the carpet, on the baseboards, so I wouldn't accidentally catch a reflection in a mirror or see something in a doorway. I'd grab whatever I needed and run back like my feet were on fire. One of my clearest early memories is so mundane, which almost makes it worse. My parents were downstairs. I was playing, and I realized I'd left a favorite toy upstairs. I went up, and I remember feeling this heavy, occupied presence in the guest room at the end of the hall. Not a sound, not a movement, just the certainty that something was in there. And I remember coaching myself like a tiny, nervous adult. Don't look down there. If you look, you'll see something. If you see something, you can't unsee it. So I didn't look. I kept my eyes down, grabbed my toy, came right back down, pretending I was fine. That became my whole strategy for years. Denial with legs. Total psychological avoidance. If something impossible had stood in front of me and waved, I genuinely think I would have gone, "Nope, brain glitch," and I would have forced myself to forget it. My bedroom didn't help. It used to be the servants' quarters, tucked away like an afterthought. Outside my door was this little landing area with an old laundry chute and these narrow back stairs that went down toward the kitchen. That landing became the dumping zone for toy bins, plastic tubs full of whatever I was into at the time. At night, after I turned the lights off, those toys would go off. Not like a toy glitches once and makes a sad little noise. I mean multiple sounds, in sequence, like someone was standing out there pushing buttons with intention. The dinosaur roars would start up, sometimes one, sometimes both, like they were fighting. Then a book would chirp, then something else would light up. Every time I worked up the courage to go look, it would stop. Like as soon as I stepped into that landing, everything went dead quiet. I'd dig through the bins thinking maybe something was wedged in pressing a button. Nothing was. We tried moving them around, separating them, leaving them on top of the bin with nothing touching them. Same thing. Eventually the dinosaurs just lived on top of the bin permanently because it was easier than pulling them out every night. And they still did it, night after night. My mom tried to laugh it off. She'd say stuff like, "Those dumb dinosaurs again," like it was a quirky household annoyance. But I could tell, just in the way she'd pause before she spoke, that it got under her skin too. And I was so scared that I started sneaking out of my room almost every night. I'd creep into my parents' room and sleep on the floor next to their bed. I'd wedge myself facing the bed frame or the side of a chair, anything so I wouldn't have to stare into open space. They would catch me sometimes and get mad, like, "Go back to bed, you're fine." But I didn't care. The floor in their room felt safer than my bed ever did, because in my kid logic, I had this belief that if I ever really looked, if I ever met whatever was there head on, then something would finally happen and my denial would break. And once denial broke, I didn't know how you kept living in that house. Okay, fast forward a few years. I'm maybe 8-ish. My older sister threw a Halloween party. She had a whole pack of friends over, and I had 2 buddies, Caleb and Noah. We all decided to play hide and seek in the dark, but we made a rule. First floor only. No upstairs, because the house was huge and nobody wanted to search that whole maze. A couple rounds go by, and my friend Caleb gets tagged, so he's it. He goes off to count, and we scatter, giggling, whispering, hiding behind furniture like we're geniuses. We wait, and wait, and eventually we hear footsteps upstairs, and we're like, "What? That's not even allowed." So we come out, everybody confused, and we go looking for him, and we find him upstairs anyway, in my room. He's standing there absolutely frozen, like full body stiff, face pale, eyes wet. He looked like he'd just watching someone get hurt. He goes, "Why were you calling me?" And we're all like, "We weren't." He swore someone had been calling his name, not yelling, not joking around, just a voice, close enough to follow, saying, "Caleb, come here, Caleb." So he followed it, all the way up, into the one room that already felt wrong. No one was there. Later, another moment that sticks like a thorn. My sister and I were home alone and walked to this little ice cream place nearby. We were coming back, standing in the front yard eating and talking, just lingering because it was a nice night. Then we saw it. In my sister's upstairs bedroom window, this clear silhouette of a man stepped into view and looked down at us, like he was checking who was outside. Not a vague shadow, an actual human shape. We both saw it at the same time. We ran inside, heart pounding, calling out. Checked the rooms. Nothing. No one. No explanation that fit. Marco's place, late 2000s. This one's shorter, but it hit me hard. I had a friend, Marco, who lived in the suburbs. Newer neighborhood, the kind of place that feels aggressively normal. And he was always saying his house was haunted. Specifically, he'd talk about this hooded shadow figure he'd been seeing since he was little. And I hate admitting this, but we were jerks about it. Me and my friends turned it into a running joke. Like, "Oh yeah, your suburban ghost probably pays HOA dues." Or, "Dude, I think I saw your ghost grilling in cargo shorts." Stuff like that. We didn't believe him, and it became this dumb comedy bit. One day I'm at his house, and he's clearly fed up. He's like, "Fine, you want to mess around? Let's mess around." So we sit in his room and do that classic thing. If something's here, 1 knock for yes, 2 for no. Nothing happens. So of course, I start joking again, and I'm mid-sentence, mid-laugh, and this violent slam hits the top of his game console like someone just brought their fist down on it from above. Right next to us. Not across the room, not a creak, not settling. A sharp, heavy boom. We both snapped into terror so fast it was embarrassing, like cartoon-level fear. We looked around for what could have fallen. There was nothing. No shelf above it. Nothing that could explain that sound in that spot, that hard. We didn't keep joking after that. I'm not saying I know what it was. I'm saying that was the moment I stopped treating his stories like entertainment. A church story I still can't file away. 2010s. This last one isn't mine, but it's the one that messes with me the most. A church I grew up around had this maintenance guy, Earl. Older guy, kind, practical, the type you'd trust with your house keys without thinking twice. Veteran, straight shooter, not dramatic, not someone who tells stories. His dad had done the same job before him at the same church, so their family had been tied to that place forever. One day, the topic of weird stuff came up, and I kind of nudged, gently, like, "Have you ever experienced anyone strange there?" And he hesitated in this way that felt heavy, like he was deciding whether to hand someone a secret he'd kept locked up for years. Then he told me that once, when he was alone in the church, walking down the main aisle doing his rounds, he started lifting off the ground, just rising. And he didn't come down until he reached the front. I know how that sounds. I know. It sounds like a movie scene. It sounds like something you'd make up if you wanted attention. But he didn't tell it like that. He told it like a man admitting something that still embarrassed him. Like he'd carried it too long and needed to say it out loud at least once before he died. And what do you do with a story like that? I don't have an answer. I don't even have a neat interpretation. I just have this growing pile of moments that don't fit cleanly into childhood imagination or coincidence anymore. And maybe that's the point. Maybe some things don't fit. But I swear to you, every single one of these moments left me with the same feeling. Like there are certain rooms you learn not to look into. And once you learn that habit, it's hard to stop. You know how some things happen when you're a kid? Something just a little off, and it sticks to you like glue? This is one of those things for me. I grew up in India, in one of those big company housing colonies, gated, kind of its own little world. There were rows of quarters, neighbors who felt like family, and flat rooftops you could actually walk on. Terraces are normal there. Kids run wild in the evenings, and everyone knows everyone. I was about 9, maybe 10. Back then, we didn't have activities the way kids do now. After school, we'd dump our bags, eat something quick, and then we'd be outside playing until it got dark. One afternoon, though, my school let out early, half day. I came home around 1. My parents were both at work, and my older sister, Mira, was still at school. The house key was with the neighbor, like it always was. I grabbed it, let myself in, ate lunch, locked up again, and went out looking for someone, anyone, to play with. But most kids were still in school. The only one hanging around was this older guy from a couple houses down, Arjun. He was, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years older than me. He wasn't a kid. He'd talk to me like I was a person, like I mattered. He'd tell me little life things, random advice, stories, stuff I thought was so grown up and interesting. I waved. He came over, and I remember saying, "Want to sit inside? I can unlock the door." And Arjun goes, "Nah, let's go up to the terrace." Now, in our quarters, you could reach the terrace stairs from the back without going through the house. It wasn't weird, just convenient. Then he says something that, looking back, makes my stomach tighten even now. "Let's wait for my friend. He'll come too." So we waited. It was around 2:30 when his friend arrived. Arjun called him around to the back of my house. And this is where it gets hard to explain, because I can still see him in my head. His name, at least what Arjun called him, was Rafi. He was thin, really thin. He walked using 2 crutches. He had this permanent smile, like his face just lived there. He'd speak in the local language with Arjun, not Hindi, and he didn't really talk to me. He mostly just looked at me and smiled, like he knew me, like we had a joke I wasn't in on. The 3 of us went up to the terrace. We barely lasted, because it was roasting hot. That dead afternoon heat where even the air feels heavy. After a few minutes, Arjun said we should go down. So we hurried down first, me and Arjun, because we didn't have crutches slowing us. But Rafi, he came down slowly, and I still remember the sound. Tick, tick, tick. Crutch tips on the steps. Steady, patient, like a clock. Our staircase had a landing halfway up where it turned back on itself, so you couldn't see someone until they rounded that bend. Me and Arjun were waiting at the bottom, listening. Tick, tick, tick. Then Rafi appeared at the halfway turn, looking down at me, smiling like he'd been smiling the whole time. Arjun walked off toward the front. I followed a second later, unlocked the door to grab water, like a polite kid, and by the time I came back out with a glass, they were gone. And honestly, for the next couple days, life was normal. School, snacks, playing, dinner. No drama. Nothing. Until hide and seek. It was early evening, maybe 5:15 or so. There were 4 or 5 of us playing. Me and my friend Kunal decided the best hiding spot was my terrace. I told him, "You go all the way up. I'll stay near the stairs so if someone gets caught, the other can run." So Kunal went up. A while later, the seeker gave up and shouted out, "Okay, everyone out." I heard Kunal coming down fast. Thump, thump, thump. His feet hammering the steps. And then I heard it. Tick, tick, tick. I froze, because it wasn't Kunal's footsteps. It was that same, slow, careful rhythm. And my brain tried to save me, you know? It tried to be logical. I told myself, it's wind. It's something loose. It's in my head. But then, just like before, someone rounded the halfway landing. And it was Rafi. Same crutches, same smile, same direct stare at me like he was looking through me. And I swear to you, my whole body went cold, like my skin forgot how to be warm. I just ran. I ran into the house, grabbed my mom like I was drowning, and I was crying so hard I could barely breathe. I kept saying, "Someone is on the stairs. Someone is on the stairs." My dad came rushing. "What? Where?" He took me back toward the rear stairs, probably within a minute, maybe 2. I was shaking, pointing upward, saying, "He's there. He's up there." My dad went all the way up, checked the terrace, checked corners, looked over the edge. Nothing. No one. And there was no way someone on crutches could have vanished in that time without us seeing them. My dad told me I probably imagined it. That sometimes when you're scared, your mind fills in details. I wanted to believe him. I really did. Later, I asked Arjun casually, trying to act normal. "Hey, how's your friend? The one you brought over the other day?" Arjun smiled and said, "He's fine," and then immediately changed the topic. And that was it. After that, I stopped using those back stairs as much as I could. I'd avoid them without even thinking, like an instinct. About a month later, my dad was trimming this overgrown tree behind our quarter. My mom made lemonade and told me to bring it to him. I carried the glass out and sat near the bottom of the terrace stairs while he drank. I kept looking at that halfway landing, like my eyes couldn't stop checking it. The wind slammed the terrace door upstairs. Bang! And I jumped. But I told myself it was just wind. Dad had the door open. Then, tick, tick, tick. I remember whispering to myself, "No, no, no, that's not real." And after a few ticks, I saw the tips of the crutches first, just the bottom of them, like a preview. I didn't even grab the empty glass back. I just bolted inside and told my mom I wasn't feeling well. I went to my room and lay down, heart pounding like I'd sprinted miles. Then we moved. A couple years later, we relocated to a new state, new city, different neighborhood, different house, one we were building ourselves, actually. The ground floor was finished, and the top floor was still under construction. We had these side stairs leading up, and then another set to the terrace. I started going up to watch sunsets because the view was beautiful. For a while, everything felt clean, new, like maybe I'd left the fear behind. Then one evening, around 5 again, I was sitting midway on the stairs, just staring out at rooftops, thinking about nothing. And I heard it. Tick, tick, tick. Not loud at first, almost like my brain was remembering before my ears were hearing. But it got clearer. I didn't wait. I just ran down and locked myself inside, telling myself, okay, this is it. I'm having delusions. Something's wrong with me. That night, I mentioned the old colony to my mom. I brought up Arjun, just casually, and his friend who used crutches. My mom got quiet for a second and said something like, "Oh, I remember hearing that one of his disabled friends passed away. It was a big deal there. He was young." And I remember sitting there thinking, no, please no. Because if that was true, then who did I see on the stairs? One day in college, I broke my own rule without realizing it. We were waiting for Vivas, those oral exams, and it was a Saturday, one of those dead quiet days where the campus feels abandoned. My friends finished early and went to the canteen. I stayed back to wait for our last friend, Samir. So there I was, alone, sitting on the main staircase, 4 floors, classrooms all around, barely any students left. I wasn't even thinking about it. I was just waiting. Then, tick, tick, tick. It started above me, and I swear my blood turned watery. Because in all of college, I'd never seen anyone using crutches there. Not once. I told myself, it's nothing, it's echo, it's pipes, it's your brain being stupid. But the sound got closer, clearer, like it was coming down toward that turn where I wouldn't see whoever it was until the last second. And I couldn't do it. I stood up and walked fast, almost ran, out of the stairwell and sat outside where a few students were hanging around on the grass. Somewhere open, somewhere with people. Samir came out later. We went to the canteen, and I never told them why I'd moved. And that's the part that messes with me the most. It almost never happens when I'm with someone. Not really. It's like it waits for me to be alone, quiet, still, on stairs. And I still don't know what I believe. I don't know if it's fear that rewired my brain. I don't know if it's coincidence. I don't know if grief or guilt or childhood imagination can create something so real it leaves scars. I just know the sound has never fully left me. Tick, tick, tick. And I don't think I've ever had the courage to stay seated long enough to find out what happens if I don't run. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you this the way it actually felt, because even now, years later, it still sits in my head like a puzzle piece that never quite clicks into place. Back in 2016, I moved into a college dorm at a small private university in Southern California. I won't name the school this time because, honestly, the specific name isn't even the point. The point is the room. From the moment I started living there, there was this weight. Like the air was thicker in our little space than it should have been. And yes, full honesty, I was going through it back then. Stress, depression, the whole messy cocktail. But even accounting for that, the room itself felt wrong. Not scary in a jump scare way, more like walking into a place where someone had cried for a long time and the walls never forgot it. Our room was near the very end of the building, right by a little turnaround area where cars could pull in and out. basically a dead-end corner of the dorm. The back window faced the athletics field, and the front looked out into the hallway where you could always hear students laughing and yelling and living their loud, uncomplicated lives. And then the weird thing started. The first morning after I slept there, I woke up and noticed a small pile of gray ash on my desk. Not on the floor, not scattered. A neat little pile, like someone had pinched it between their fingers and set it down carefully. It was only a few inches away from my cigarettes, which made my brain immediately go, did I ash in my sleep? But I didn't smoke inside, and it didn't even look like cigarette ash. It was too fine, too powdery, almost delicate. I wiped it away and tried not to be dramatic about it. The second morning, it happened again. Another pile. Different spot, same general area of the desk. I told my roommate, her name was Kara, and she came over, stared at it, and went, "Okay, that's not normal." We checked everything. The ceiling, the light fixture, the shelf above the desk. We even looked for some kind of weird vent or crack or anything that could drop debris. Nothing. No explanation. Third morning, another pile. Bigger this time. And this is the part that made it feel extra unsettling. I would check the desk before going to sleep. Clean. Bare. Nothing there. Kara always fell asleep before me, and I always woke up before her. No one else had a key. No one was sneaking in and sprinkling ash on my desk like some kind of prankster ash fairy. It didn't make sense. By night 4, I was barely sleeping at all. You know that feeling when your body is exhausted, but your brain is on high alert anyway? That was me. I'd drift and then jolt awake like I was falling, over and over. Eventually, I did fall into this shallow sleep, and I had one of the worst nightmares I've ever had. It wasn't one of those dreams with a clear plot. It was more like being dropped into the emotional aftermath of something awful. Like I was watching a scene from far away, but I could still feel the fear in my bones. There was a young woman, Asian, I think, and a man, and there was yelling or conflict or panic. I couldn't hold on to the details, just the sensation that something terrible had happened or was about to happen. And right as I started to wake up, one word kept repeating in my head, layered over itself like different voices calling from different directions. Lynn. 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 I woke up drenched in sweat, heart hammering, completely shaken. And I'm almost embarrassed to even say this, but it's part of why I couldn't shrug it off. I had wet the bed. That had literally never happened to me as an adult. Not once. I just lay there in shock, humiliated and scared, trying to convince myself it was just stress and a new environment, and my brain being weird. And then, this is the strange little detail. After that nightmare, the ash stopped. No pile the next day. No pile the day after that. Just gone. A few days later, I was sitting in one of my classes, something like intercultural communication, and the professor started talking about how different cultures process death and grief, and how, in a lot of places, people don't talk about it directly. And then she casually mentioned that a few years earlier, there had been a student death on campus. A foreign exchange student, Vietnamese, I think. And it happened in a bathroom in the same dorm building. The school apparently kept it quiet, not publicly discussed, not something students were supposed to spread around. I remember sitting there as she talked, and my stomach just dropped. Because she described how the area near the turnaround made it easier for campus staff to handle emergencies without drawing attention. And my brain instantly went, that's our end of the building. That's our corner. The ash on my desk, the suffocating heaviness, the nightmare, the name, Lynn, echoing like a warning. That night, I told Kara what I'd learned, and she went pale. Neither of us said it at first, but we both had the same thought hovering between us. What if this room is connected? After that, things were mostly quiet for a while. We even tried to cope by turning it into a nervous little joke. If something slipped off the wall or a hanger fell, we'd mutter, "Okay, Lynn, we get it," and then laugh too loudly because we didn't know what else to do. Then winter break happened. Kara got back to campus before I did, and the day before I returned, she called me, like genuinely shaking. She told me she'd stepped outside for a smoke with a friend, came back into the room, and on her desk, not mine, there was a massive pile of ash. Not a little coin-sized pile. She said it looked almost arranged, long and thick, like someone had carefully poured it out in a line. She was freaking out, and honestly, I don't blame her. The ash had moved. It had chosen a new place. Kara ended up talking to an aunt of hers, one of those people who's sort of known in the family for being sensitive, gifted, whatever word you want to use. And her aunt suggested we write a letter. Not anything dramatic, just something simple, kind, respectful, basically saying, "We're not here to harm you. You don't have to stay here. If you're stuck, you can go. You can leave." Around that same time, a new student moved into the room next door. Her name was May, a shy exchange student from Taiwan, which felt like this weird coincidence stacked on top of everything else. Eventually her roommate moved out and she was alone, and I started hearing her through the wall late at night, talking, crying, sometimes sounding like she was arguing with someone who wasn't there. Kara and I looked at each other a lot during those nights. You know that look. The look that says, "Are you hearing this too?" without ever actually saying the words out loud. By the end of the year, both our room and the one next to it were suddenly repurposed into storage. Storage. Just like that. And maybe it was an innocent logistical thing. Maybe they needed space. But a part of me couldn't stop thinking the school knew. That they didn't want stories, didn't want rumors, didn't want people connecting dots or talking about ash appearing on desks in the same hall where someone had died. The last piece that still gnaws at me is this. I tried to find information later. A name, a record, an obituary, anything. And I couldn't. Nothing public, nothing easy to trace. Like the person had been erased from the official story. So I'm left with these questions that I still don't know how to answer. What were those ashes? Why did they appear so neatly, night after night, like a message? Why did it stop after the nightmare, after the name? And if that student really was still there in some way, what did she want? To be seen? To be remembered? To be acknowledged? I don't know. I still don't know. But I swear to you, I can still picture that first little gray pile sitting on my desk like it had been placed there on purpose. Quiet, patient, impossible. And honestly, that's the part that still makes my skin crawl. So, my partner Marisol and I moved into this slightly too charming old place a couple years back. The kind of house that looks sweet in the daytime. Big porch, worn banister, little stained glass window by the stairs. And then at night, you start noticing how loud, quiet can be. Floorboards that complain, doors that sigh, that whole vibe. And honestly, we hadn't even finished unpacking before it started. At first it was footsteps, like clear as day, someone pacing upstairs while we're both downstairs in the kitchen. Not the soft creak, creak of a settling house, This was more like someone has somewhere to be. We'd freeze, look at each other, and do that silent, "Are you hearing this?" conversation. I kept telling myself, old homes just talk. But the footsteps had a little too much confidence for that. Then we got our first round of vanishing acts. My wallet disappeared one morning. Marisol's earrings went missing right off the dresser. We'd tear through drawers, check pockets, retrace every step like we were detectives in sweatpants. And then the stuff would turn up in the weirdest places. One time, I found my wallet in the laundry basket under a clean towel. Another time, no joke, Marisol opened the pantry, and there were her earrings sitting on top of the cereal box, like they'd been placed there neatly on purpose. We laughed. We really did. Like, okay, cute, the house is playing games. Because what else do? You either laugh or you start sleeping with all the lights on. But the moment that changed everything happened on our anniversary. We weren't doing anything fancy, just dinner at home. Candles, a little music. The kind of night where you're trying to remember you're not just roommates who share bills. We're mid-toast, feeling all romantic and proud of ourselves, when the room suddenly drops in temperature. Not a little chilly, I mean instant cold. Like someone opened a door to winter. And the candles, they didn't just flicker, they panicked. The flames leaned hard to one side like they were trying to escape. Then our framed wedding photo, this big one we had hung near the dining table, started swaying, back and forth. Slow at first, then a little stronger, like someone had given it a gentle push. We both just stared. We checked the windows, locked. No AC blast, no fan, nothing. Marisol whispered, "Don't you dare say it's the house settling. Because, come on." After that, we did what every reasonable adult does. We went full amateur investigator. We asked neighbors questions, dug through old local newsletters online, even found a little article about the house from years back. And that's when we learned the previous owner was this guy named Gordon Hale, apparently known around the block for being a harmless troublemaker, always pulling pranks, always messing with people, that kind of personality. And he passed away in the house. And I'm not saying that proves anything, but it sure didn't make me feel less watched, you know? Here's the weird part, though. It didn't get darker. It got familiar. Like the house wasn't trying to scare us as much as it was trying to participate. The TV turns on by itself sometimes, always at low volume, like it's trying not to be rude. Once we came home and the radio was playing this old swing song, crackly and cheerful, like we'd walked into someone else's party. Marisol just shook her head and went, "Well, thanks for the music, I guess." And now we have a routine about it. We'll say things out loud like, "All right, Gordon, that's enough," when something goes missing. And half the time it turns up later in a spot that makes you feel like you're being gently teased. And every once in a while, right when someone says, "Okay, but do you actually think there's a ghost?" the upstairs floor will creak. Just once. Like it's listening. Like it's enjoying the attention. And honestly, at this point, we just smile at each other. Because somehow, the strangest thing about this whole situation is that it's become kind of comforting. Like the house is alive in its own way. Like we're not alone here. And whoever's with us, whether it's Gordon or just the world being weird, seems pretty committed to keeping things interesting. So picture this. Me and my partner Jules finally snagged this cozy little place on a quiet cul-de-sac. Not fancy, just one of those, yep, this is a house, houses. Fresh paint smell, creaky steps, the whole suburban starter pack vibe. Anyway, the first weird thing happens on this rainy Tuesday night. I'm sprawled on the couch in the family room, half-heartedly picking at my acoustic guitar, just messing around, nothing serious. And then, I hear it. A melody. Soft. slow, kind of delicate, but also off. Like the notes are beautiful, but they're carrying this chill with them, like they've got a secret. At first, I actually laugh because my brain goes, okay, Jules is messing with me. So I stop playing and look over at them like, really? And Jules just blinks back at me, holding a bowl of popcorn midair, like they forgot how arms work. They go, do you hear that? And my stomach does this tiny little drop. Because yeah, I hear it. The next night, we tell ourselves it was probably the neighbors. Old houses carry sound weird, right? So we're trying to be normal about it, sitting in the den, lights low, scrolling on our phones, pretending we're not bracing for spooky piano round 2. And then it starts again. Same melody, same gentle, eerie confidence, like whoever's playing knows we're listening now. This time, Jules grabs my hand and goes, okay, no, we're finding it. So we follow the sound through the hallway, past the guest room, to this little ceiling hatch we'd honestly been ignoring since we moved in. You know the one, pull-string ladder, dusty frame, the kind of thing you tell yourself you'll deal with later. We pull it down. The ladder groans like it's annoyed we've bothered it. And the music is louder now, clearer, like it's been waiting for us to finally show up. I climb first, because I guess that's who I am in horror movies. I poke my head into the attic, expecting cobwebs and boxes, and maybe a raccoon with an attitude. But instead, there's a piano. Not a normal one either. This tall, dark upright that looks like it's been there since before electricity. It's sitting under a dusty sheet, like it's been tucked in for decades. And this is the part my brain still refuses to fully accept. The keys are moving. Like actually moving. Pressing down on their own, one after another, perfectly timed. No strings, no hands. Just this old piano in the attic, playing like it's got somewhere to be. Jules climbs up behind me and whispers, "We don't own a piano." And all I can do is whisper back, "Well, apparently, we do now." The wild part is, after that first full-body panic night, it starts to feel almost normal. Like you're living with a weird roommate who has one very specific hobby. Some evenings we'd climb up there and just sit on old storage bins like they were concert seats. And the piano would play. Sometimes that same rainy night melody. Sometimes something new. Little runs of notes, like someone warming up. Sometimes a song that felt happy, even playful, like it was showing off a little. And yeah, we told people. Because how do you not? We invited friends over, my buddy Tessa and her husband Marco, and we're like, okay, before we order pizza, we have to show you something. They think it's a prank. They're laughing all the way up the ladder. And then the piano starts, right on cue, and Marco goes completely silent, like his soul briefly left to file a complaint. And we're all watching this thing play itself, and for a second, it's not even scary. It's just unreal. Like the house is holding its own little secret talent show. Eventually, curiosity wins out. We start poking around, asking neighbors, digging through old paperwork. And we find out the person who lived there before us, this older guy named Edwin, was known around the neighborhood as this serious pianist. Like, not played a little, but could make a whole room go quiet good. One neighbor, this sweet older woman down the street, tells us, real casual, "Oh, he loved that piano more than anything. Used to play up there all the time. Said the attic had the best sound." And then she kind of leans in, like she's sharing gossip, and goes, "Some folks say he never really stopped playing." I laugh when she says it, because what else do you do? But later, lying in bed, hearing those faint notes drifting through the ceiling, I'm not laughing quite as much. Still, it never felt malicious. No slamming doors, no cold hands, no creepy whispers, just music. Persistent, stubborn music, like someone loved it so much they couldn't bear to leave it behind. By the time we moved out, work relocation, nothing dramatic. We'd almost gotten sentimental about it, like we were leaving behind this odd little tradition we never asked for, but somehow became part of. And even now, if I'm being honest with you, sometimes I'll hear a piano through an open window somewhere, or in the background of a cafe, and my skin will prickle the tiniest bit. Not because I'm terrified, more like I'm remembering that feeling, standing in a dusty attic, surrounded by boxes and old insulation, watching a piano. Welcome to Paranormal M. How's your day going? Drop your city in the comments. This is my favorite part of the day, sitting down and sharing my paranormal stories with you. Nothing makes me happier than knowing they help you unwind and fall asleep easier. Thank you so much for all your support and for sending in your own paranormal experiences. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any new videos. Now, put your headphones on and let's begin. Hi everyone, I'm speaking to you from Thailand. Most of the time, I just type out creepy stories on social media, especially on X, and let people read them in silence. But this one has been sitting in my chest for years. It's not just scary, it's tragic and, in a strange way, unbelievably beautiful. And I really want people outside of Thailand to hear it too. So, in Thailand, we have this famous late-night radio show where ordinary people call in to share true ghost experiences. Some stories sound believable, some sound like they're totally made up, but almost all of them leave you thinking long after the call ends. One night, a father called in to talk about his daughter, a little girl named Molly. And while I was listening to him, it triggered a memory, an old headline from more than 10 years ago that shook the whole country. It was something like, a mother who had already died still got up to make milk for her little girl. Let me tell you that story the way I remember it. So, around 15 years ago, there was a young mother living just outside Bangkok, in a small apartment in Nonthaburi. She lived there with her daughter Molly, who was about 3 years old at the time. The mother, let's call her Nita, had epilepsy. Normally she managed fine. She took her medication, went to work, came home to her daughter. It was a simple life, but it was theirs. Then one day, Nita suddenly died in her bedroom. No one knew right away. She didn't show up for work. At first, her coworkers thought maybe she overslept, or maybe her phone battery died. But when they couldn't reach her all day, one coworker got worried and called Nita's older sister, Lek, to check on her. Lek tried calling too. No answer. After several tries, something in her gut told her, this isn't right. So she drove over to Nita's place. When she reached the apartment building and called up to the unit, she heard small footsteps inside. Then the door cracked open just a little, and there was Molly. This tiny 3-year-old girl stood there in an oversized t-shirt, her hair tangled, her face a little dirty. There was a faint metallic smell clinging to her, something Lek couldn't quite process at first. Lek bent down, trying to keep her voice gentle. She asked, "Where's Mommy, sweetheart?" Molly, in that broken toddler way of speaking, answered, "Mommy's sick. Mommy's sleeping on the bed. There's red on Mommy." Lek felt her chest tighten, but she still didn't want to believe anything was truly wrong. She thought, maybe she just fainted. Maybe she had a seizure and she's still okay. But when Lek stepped inside, another smell hit her. Heavy, sweet, rotten. That's the smell you never forget once you've encountered death. She walked into the bedroom, and there on the bed was her younger sister's body, already starting to swell and change. Nita had been gone for days. The police and medics came. After checking everything, the doctors confirmed that Nita had died from complications related to her epilepsy. It looked like she'd had a seizure alone in the house, and never got back up. At first, everyone was just drowning in grief. But then they realized something didn't make sense. Molly, this tiny little girl, looked too healthy. She wasn't starving. She wasn't dehydrated. Her face was bright, her skin wasn't sunken, and she still had enough energy to walk, talk, and even cling to her aunt. So one of the relatives asked her softly, "Molly, these past few days, what did you eat?" And she answered in that innocent voice, "Mommy made milk for me." She also said Mommy tucked her into bed every night. Mommy sang her a lullaby. And then there was one detail that chilled everyone there. The aunt remembered how, when she arrived, the door had opened just enough for Molly to slip out on her own. The lock was too high for a 3-year-old to reach. When they asked Molly how she came out, she said, "Mommy held my hand. Mommy walked me to the door. Mommy said, 'Go to Auntie. Mommy, come later.'" What made it even stranger was what the neighbors told the police. During the days Nita was already dead, the neighbors still heard normal household sounds from the apartment. Dishes clinking in the sink, footsteps moving back and forth, the soft swish of a broom sweeping the floor. And at night, just beneath the hum of the TV and traffic, they occasionally heard a woman's voice humming a lullaby from the direction of the child's room. But no one came out. No one went in. Inside that apartment, the only living person was Molly. After the funeral, Molly went to live with her aunt, Lek, the same aunt who had found Nita's body. People slowly stopped talking about the case. New headlines came, and the old ones faded. Years passed. Molly grew bigger. Outwardly, everything looked okay. Then one day, Lek and Molly appeared on a popular Thai TV show that deals with the supernatural. It was a program where they invited spirit mediums to communicate with the dead. On the show, the medium claimed to reach Nita's spirit. Through the medium, Nita said she was still in the old apartment, restless and worried. She supposedly told Lek, "Take better care of my daughter. Don't let her suffer." The audience was moved. Some people cried watching it when it aired. The story of the devoted mother who kept watching over her child, even after death, touched a lot of hearts. But a few years later, the real horror finally surfaced. Neighbors around Lek's house started hearing strange sounds, crying, whimpering, sometimes sharp yells. At first, people thought it was just normal family arguments, or a kid throwing a tantrum. But over time, the sounds became more disturbing. Someone finally called the police. When officers arrived and searched the house, what they found was heartbreaking. Molly was being kept in a dog cage. This girl, who had already lost her mother in such a terrible way, was now living like an animal. She had bruises on her arms and legs, old marks and fresh ones mixed together. The neighbors and authorities learned that Lek had been abusing her for a long time, forcing her to eat her own vomit, locking her outside, hitting her when she cried. The woman who had once told the world she was raising her niece with love had turned into her tormentor. When the news broke, the whole country was stunned. People were furious. How could someone who had seen her sister die and taken in her child do something so cruel? Molly's father, Ton, had been working far away in another province after his wife's death. He had been sending money home and trusting Lek to raise his daughter. The moment he heard what had happened, he rushed back and took Molly into his care. He blamed himself. He admitted he hadn't been around enough. He had trusted too much. He promised he wouldn't leave her again. After Molly moved in with her father, things slowly settled. But Ton started to notice something odd. At night, he would sometimes pass by her room and hear her talking softly, like she was chatting with someone else. Not babbling, talking. Pausing, listening, answering. Sometimes he heard a humming sound too. A gentle lullaby. the kind sung to small children, the same rhythm Nita used to use when Molly was a baby. Ton said on the radio that he had no doubt in his heart. It was Nita. His late wife was still there, guarding their daughter. Then one night, something changed. Ton was sitting downstairs when he heard hurried footsteps on the stairs, then small sobs. He looked up and saw Molly coming down, crying. He ran to her. "What's wrong, Molly? What happened?" She buried her face in his shirt, shaking. After a moment, she looked up at him with red, swollen eyes and said quietly, "Mom's gone." Ton said those 2 words broke him. He held her and didn't know what to say. That night, the house felt painfully silent. No late-night humming, no soft talking through the door, just the sound of the fan and their breathing. From that night onward, he never again heard the lullaby. He never again heard his daughter talking to that unseen someone. And something else changed too. Molly, who used to rush to bed like she had someone waiting for her there, stopped hurrying. She went to sleep like any ordinary child, reluctant some nights, sleepy on others, but whatever invisible presence had been beside her seemed to have finally left. It was as if Nita had stayed until she was sure Molly was safe, loved, and protected. And then, only then, did she allow herself to move on. Today, Molly is a bright young woman. She's in her 20s now. She helps her dad run a small noodle stall in a market. If you saw her laughing with customers, you'd never guess the things she lived through. Sometimes people say they can feel a gentle warmth around their stall, like the atmosphere is just a bit softer. Ton likes to joke that it's because his wife is still checking if he's slicing the pork properly. But deep down, I think he really believes it. And honestly, I do too. I'll never forget this story. It reminds me that love, especially a mother's love, doesn't just stop when the heart stops beating. Sometimes it lingers just long enough to walk a child to the door, to make one last glass of milk, to sing one last lullaby, and to make sure that, in the end, they're truly, finally safe. Okay, so let me just start from the beginning. I've lived in the same house my whole life, like literally since I came home from the hospital. We never moved, never switched cities, nothing. The most moving I've ever done was when my older sister moved out and I got her room upstairs. Our upstairs is weird. There are only 2 doors up there, my bedroom and then the attic right next to it. That's it. No cute little hallway, no extra bathroom, nothing. Just my room and a creepy attic door that I have to walk past every night before I go to sleep. So, a few things have happened that really scared me, but for a long time I didn't tell my parents because I thought they'd just laugh it off. In my room, I have this LED sign on the wall. It used to say, Mia's room, in big cursive letters when I first got it. But I put stickers on it, so now it just says Mia, with stars around it. It has a little remote that can change the color and brightness and all that. Here's the part that freaks me out. Sometimes it turns on by itself. No one touching the remote, no timer set. Just suddenly, in the middle of the night, my wall lights up purple or neon blue. And it's always late. Like, the whole house is dead silent and your brain is making up noises late. And I am, admittedly, a huge scaredy cat. The first time it happened, I was lying in bed watching true crime videos on my phone. You know those commentary channels that talk about missing people and cold cases? Back then it was some guy named Tyler who I watched all the time. So I'm under my blankets, headphones in, lights off, and suddenly my wall glows bright pink. I froze. I kind of laughed at myself, turned the sign off, and the next day I told my dad. He just shrugged and was like, "It's probably a glitch, or the remote got bumped." and I remember feeling kind of dumb, so I just dropped it. The second time, though, was worse. It was around midnight. I was in my room playing an online game with my friends, one of those late-night sessions where everyone's half delirious and laughing at nothing. We were on voice chat, just talking and messing around. I glanced up toward my door for a second and saw my sign glowing this bright blue. I hadn't touched the remote. It was on my desk on the other side of the room. I stopped mid-sentence, went completely quiet, and my friend was like, "Mia, you good?" I muted my mic so fast and just started typing, telling them my sign had turned on by itself again. I got up, turned it off, and for the rest of the night I was on edge. Every little sound made me jump. I kept looking at the attic door like something was going to walk out. That's not the only thing that happens, though. My bedroom door likes to creak open on its own. At least, that's what it feels like. I'll close it all the way. Sometimes I'm sure I even locked it. And then later, I'll look up and see it cracked open just enough that I can't tell if someone pushed it or if it just drifted. Every time that happens, my heart just slams in my chest. Because upstairs is just me and that attic. Oh, and then there's my thermostat. So we keep the bedroom thermostat set at 72 degrees. Or we try to. But for some reason, it never stays there. I'll wake up at 6 in the morning for school and it'll say 79. When I get home in the afternoon, it'll be 84 or 85. But those are just the everyday creepy things. The really unsettling stuff, that involves my best friend. I'll call her Rin. Before I tell you the first big story, I need to give you some context. When I was about 4, my mom got pregnant with a baby girl. They were going to name her Rosie. What was kind of special was how our birthdays would have lined up. My birthday is March 24th. Rosie's due date was March 25th. And my older brother, let's call him Owen, has his birthday on March 26th. We thought it would be this cool little birthday chain, but my mom had a miscarriage. It was really hard on everybody. I didn't fully understand it back then, but I remember the mood in the house, the way my mom cried in the kitchen when she thought we couldn't hear her. As I got older, I understood more, and Rosie became this quiet little missing piece in our family. Okay, so this first story happened before I moved into the upstairs bedroom. Back then, my brother basically lived in our game room. That was where the console was. My parents wouldn't let him keep it in his room, so he'd stay in there late, playing whatever he was obsessed with at the time on his PlayStation. One weekend, Rin came over for a sleepover. We decided to crash in the game room because it had the comfiest couch and a big TV. Owen was there too, sitting on the floor with his headset on, completely absorbed in his game. At some point, I fell asleep. The next morning, I woke up groggy, hair a mess, and Rin was just staring at me. Like, really staring. I was like, "What?" And she goes, "I have to tell you something, but please don't freak out." She told me that she woke up in the middle of the night. Owen was gone. He must have gone to his room to sleep. So it was just her on the couch and me knocked out next to her. She said she glanced over at the big window that looks out at our backyard and the pool, and saw a little girl walking along the edge of the water. Rin said the girl had long brown hair and was wearing this pale dress. And the part that really stuck with me? She said the girl looked exactly like me, just smaller. Like an 8-year-old version of me instead of the age I actually was then. Rin watched her for a few seconds, stunned, and then the girl just wasn't there anymore. I honestly don't remember exactly how I reacted when she told me. I don't know if she told me right that morning or a bit later, but at some point my brain connected it. Rosie. I don't know if I believe in ghosts, at least not in the movie way. But the idea that maybe my little sister, the one who never got to be born, was still somehow close, watching over us, that kind of lodged itself in my chest and never really left. The last story I remember, the one that still makes my stomach drop when I think about it, also involves Rin. More context time. I have an older cousin, but I grew up calling her my sister. I'll call her Danny. She moved in with my parents when she was about 13, so by the time I was born, she was already living with us. Technically, she's my mom's niece, but to me and Owen, she was just our big sister. Danny is a lot older than us, 12 or 13 years, something like that. So she moved out when we were still pretty young. She had her first kid really early, a little girl, and then later a son. For this story, we're going to talk about her son. I'll call him Eli. Eli's this really sweet kid, very shy, and he loves baseball. He's always wearing some kind of cap, even indoors. Our living room is big and open, which is nice during the day. At night, though, it's a little unnerving because the back wall is basically all windows. If someone were in our backyard, they could just stand there and watch us, and we might not notice right away. I never really liked sleeping down there. I always felt safer upstairs, just me and my creepy attic door. But Rin liked the big couch and the TV, and I wanted her to be happy, so we set up blankets and pillows and fell asleep in the living room. At some point in the night, I woke up. I didn't have my phone nearby, and there was no clock I could see, but something in me was like, it's 2 a.m. You know that feeling when your body just knows it's the middle of the night? The room was dark, but some light was coming in from the street through the blinds, just enough to see shapes. I turned my head toward Rin, and that's when I saw him. There was a tall, shadowy figure standing over her, right next to where she was sleeping. It looked like a teenage boy, taller than both of us, and he was wearing a baseball cap. I couldn't make out a face, just the outline, but it was so clear. Like, I remember the angle of the hat and the way his shoulders were hunched forward a little, like he was leaning down. For a second I thought I was still dreaming, but the fear felt way too real. My heart was pounding, my mouth went dry, and I just stared. Then the shadow turned its head toward me. The moment we made eye contact, if you can even call it that, it vanished. Just gone. No footsteps, no fading away. 1 second it was there, the next second there was nothing but the couch and Rin sleeping. I lay there for a long time, frozen, trying to decide if I should wake her up or not. Eventually I must have fallen back asleep, because the next thing I remember is it being morning. Later, when we were talking, I told Rin about what I'd seen. She kind of laughed it off at first and said, maybe that was future Eli watching over us. You know he's obsessed with baseball. And I laughed too, because it was easier than sitting in the idea that maybe some random shadow guy was watching us sleep. I tried to convince myself it was just a dream, or that my eyes were messing with me in the dark. But the image never really left my mind. Then, this last summer, about 3 years after that happened, we were in my pool just hanging out, talking about spooky stuff for fun. I brought the story up again. At first, Rin was smiling, kind of swimming around, and then I told her, hey, remember that night in the living room when I saw that tall shadow in the baseball cap? Her whole expression changed. She went from playful to terrified in a second. She told me that she had read or watched something about people seeing tall, shadowy figures at night, especially ones that stand at the side of the bed and watch people sleep. She said it really freaked her out and that she hates thinking about it. I didn't want to make her more scared, so I laughed and said, I'm totally kidding. I was just messing with you. I probably imagined it. But I wasn't joking. I can still see that outline if I think about it too long. I can still feel that heavy, electric fear in my chest. And sometimes, when my sign randomly turns on at 1 in the morning, or my door creaks open when I know I closed it, or my thermostat is way higher than it should be, I catch myself wondering who or what is actually sharing this house with me. So, let me tell you about my very first ghost hunt, because I still think about this night. It was late September last year, and me and my two friends, let's call them Emma and Jake, to keep their real names private, decided it would be fun to go ghost hunting for the first time. Famous last words, right? We booked a guided ghost hunt at Chillingham Castle. Proper, legit thing. As the day got closer, we were buzzing. Nervous, but buzzing. A few hours before we were due to leave, Emma decides it's a brilliant idea to buy a spirit board. Like, of all days to do that. We ended up using it in Jake's room. They were dating at the time, by the way. Jake wanted no part of it, which, honestly, fair enough. Me and Emma, being absolute idiots, decided we'd give it a go. So we sit down, fingers on the planchette, candles going, being all dramatic even though we're low-key terrified. At first, it's just random spirits, you know, letters moving slowly, vague answers. I still don't know if Emma was messing with me or not. But then we connect with this one spirit who spells out the name Lyron. Now this is where it starts to get weird. We're asking basic questions, and through the board, Lyron tells us he's a demon. I'm sat there like, yeah, alright mate, because I don't fully believe in that kind of thing. While we're still talking to it, I quickly look up the name on my phone. Nothing useful comes up. No demon mythology, no creepy legends, just nothing. Which somehow made it creepier. Eventually we say goodbye, close the session properly, all the stuff you're supposed to do, and put the board away. I kind of laugh it off like, that was dumb but fun. But I remember this weird, heavy feeling in the room once we'd finished. Like the air had changed. Fast forward a bit, and it's time to drive to Chillingham Castle. We set off at about 9:30 p.m. It's dark, the roads are windy, and with the way Jake was driving, I genuinely thought that if anything was going to kill us that night, it would be him and not a ghost. We finally get there, park up, and meet the rest of the group. There's maybe about 12 other people plus the guide, so not massive, but enough that you feel a bit safer, you know? The guide comes in, introduces himself, explains the rules, shows us the equipment, rods, spirit boxes, music box, all that stuff, and talks about some of the spirits that are said to roam the castle. My heart is already going, but I'm trying to act cool. Then we head into our first investigation. Because the original basement was shut off for safety reasons, they'd recreated a sort of basement setup in a different room on the ground floor. Low lighting, stone walls, props. It had that proper eerie cellar vibe. We were given dowsing rods to hold. Now, I'm not going to lie, my hands were shaking. All three of us were standing near the entrance side of the room, kind of huddled together. The guide turned off the lights, and the room dropped into this heavy darkness. He started asking questions, and slowly, the rods began to move. Left, right, crossing over. You could hear people gasping every so often. I was trying not to overthink it, like, it's just my hands, it's just nerves. But the scariest part for me was the door. For some reason, I could not stop looking at it. It was like someone was standing right next to me, just off to the side, by that door. Every time my eyes drifted away, I felt this pull to look back at it. Then I started hearing voices, very faint, like whispering or quiet talking, coming from near the door. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but then Emma leans over and whispers, "Are you hearing that too?" And my stomach just dropped. I remember thinking, okay, that was cool, and absolutely terrifying. After that, we moved on to the second investigation. This time, we were the first ones into the room. I'm pretty sure the guide said it was connected to King James. Maybe the King's Chamber or something like that. Anyway, we walk in and there's a big wooden table with 6 chairs around it, a statue off to one side, and a back room beyond an open doorway. I'm looking around, taking it all in, when I feel Jake nudge me. He leans in and whispers, "Did you see that?" I hadn't. I was facing the other way. But both he and Emma swear they saw a hand pull back from the statue. Just a pale hand, moving away like someone had been resting it there. I didn't see it myself, so I can't say if it was real. But they were properly freaked out, and I know them well enough to know when they're joking and when they're not. They were not joking. For this investigation, we used the spirit box with the Estes method, and one of those music boxes that plays when something moves in front of it. We took turns with the Estes method, blindfolded, headphones on, only hearing the spirit box while everyone else asks questions. For the first 5-10 minutes, it was normal, I guess. A few random words that sometimes lined up with what was being asked. Then Emma takes her turn again with the spirit box. She's barely had the headphones on for 10 seconds when she says, clear as anything, demon. And the whole table just goes quiet. Now, there is said to be a malevolent spirit at the castle, called Tim or Timothy. The guide had mentioned him earlier, but said he was usually on a different floor, not up where we were. So I turned to Jake, half joking, half not, and say, imagine if Lyran followed us here. Literally, as soon as I say that, there's this massive bang from the back room. Not a tiny tap, not someone accidentally kicking something. A proper, loud crash. I jumped so hard I genuinely thought I'd, had a little accident. I didn't, thankfully, but my heart was racing. After that, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us from above. The room had an open section of ceiling, like a balcony or gallery overhead, and I kept glancing up, convinced something or someone was looking down at us. A couple of minutes go by, and I turn to look toward the door. That's when I see her. A shadow, clear as day. The outline of a woman in what looked like a dress, gliding across, maybe 5 feet in front of me. Not a trick of the light, not just a flicker. A full, solid shadow moving right across my line of sight. The guide saw it too. It wasn't him. He was behind me, about 7 or 8 feet away, sitting on a box that creaked every time he shifted his weight. I didn't hear it move, and when I glanced back, he was still in the same place. I was honestly blown away at that point. Seeing something like that with your own eyes, it hits different from stories. Then, just when I thought I'd hit my limit, something else happened. I felt a touch. Not a comforting hand on the shoulder or anything like that. This was 5 distinct pokes in my lower back, just above where my bum is, one after another. I spun around so fast I nearly made myself dizzy. But again, the guide was still where he'd been, relaxed, not even close enough to reach me. Jake was right next to me at the table, arms on the table the whole time. There was just no one there who could have done it. That really shook me. After that, things calmed down a bit, and about 10 minutes later we wrapped up that session and moved on. The final investigation was in what I'm pretty sure was the chapel. I'll be honest, most of that last investigation kind of blurred together for me. We were using some equipment, asking the usual questions, and for a while, not much happened. Then someone asked, "Tim, are you here with us?" About 2 seconds later, there was this massive bang from the back room, but it didn't sound like someone knocking on a wall. It sounded like something being thrown against it. Proper force. The sound echoed around the chapel and out into the corridor. Everyone jumped. Even the guide looked a bit surprised, and he's probably heard everything by now. After that, things settled down again, and eventually, the night came to an end. So yeah, that was my first ever paranormal investigation. We started the night messing around with a spirit board, talking to something that called itself Lyran, and ended it in a haunted castle with shadows walking past us, unseen hands poking me in the back, and something angry enough to chuck things at the wall. Do I know exactly what we experienced? No. Could some of it have a logical explanation? Maybe. But I know how I felt in those moments, and that's not something I can just shrug off. Either way, it completely hooked me. And if you've got any recommendations for other haunted places I should check out next, seriously, tell me. I'll look into them. Even if a tiny part of me is wondering whether Lyran's still keeping an eye on where I go. So, let me tell you about this really weird night I still can't explain. It was a few years ago, and I remember it so clearly because of how wrong everything felt. I think it was around 1:45 in the morning when I got to the laundromat. You know that kind of tired where your eyes burn, but your brain is still racing? That was me. I'd locked myself out of my house like an idiot. My phone was dead, and the laundromat was the only place open with lights on. When I walked in, there was this woman there, maybe late 30s, early 40s, shoulder-length dark hair, big tote bag, just quietly pulling her clothes out of one of the dryers. She had this kind face, like someone's cool aunt. I kind of hovered for a second, then said, "Excuse me, I'm really sorry to bother you, but my phone died and I'm locked out. Is there any way I could borrow your phone to call my parents?" She didn't even hesitate. "Of course," she said, and handed it over with a little smile. "Go ahead." I called my parents, once, then again. No answer, just straight to voicemail. Each ring made my stomach sink a little more. I handed the phone back and apologized for wasting her time. She shook her head. "You're fine. I hope you get a hold of them. Good luck, okay?" She gave me this sympathetic look, then walked out into the night with her laundry basket balanced on her hip. Once she left, the silence kind of settled in. It was just me, the hum of the building, and the TVs mounted up near the ceiling. There were 3 of them, all flat screens, each playing a different news channel on low volume. The only other sound was this faint buzzing from the fluorescent lights. I sat down in one of those hard plastic chairs against the wall, thinking I'd just rest my eyes. I started nodding off, drifting in and out of sleep for maybe, 45 minutes? An hour? My sense of time got fuzzy. At some point, though, I woke up with this sudden heavy feeling in my chest. Not like a physical pain, more like dread. No reason for it. Nothing had changed, really. Same TVs, same empty room. But something felt off. I remember looking up at the screens. Each TV had a different anchor, different graphics, different headlines. But as I watched, it was like my brain stopped believing it. I started thinking, this is all fake. None of this is real. And then, it got stranger. The anchors on each channel were talking, but their words started to line up in this creepy way. Not exactly the same sentences, but the rhythm of their speech, the way their mouths moved. It all seemed synchronized, like they were rehearsing the same script. My ears were ringing a little, and the sound of their voices blended into this eerie, almost robotic murmur. I remember my heart pounding, my palms sweating, and this thought just screaming in my head. Something is wrong. Something is really wrong. That's when I panicked. I grabbed my jacket and decided I needed to get out of there. The second I stepped outside, it hit me how cold it was. The air felt sharper than it had when I arrived. And the parking lot, this is what really unnerved me, was completely empty. When I first got there had been cars scattered around, some lights on in the distance, that normal late-night vibe. But now, nothing. No cars, no people, no sound except the wind. Just this big, open, dark lot. And then I heard it. The sound of a car turning into the lot behind me. You know how your body just instinctively tenses up sometimes? I froze and turned around. An old station wagon, like something straight out of the late 80s or early 90s, rolled up and stopped in front of the laundromat. The paint was this faded green, and one of the headlights looked dimmer than the other. The engine cut off, and after a second, the passenger door opened. A guy stepped out. He looked maybe mid-20s. He was holding a small laundry basket tucked under one arm. He had on light blue jeans, a red and black plaid shirt, and these worn-out sneakers that looked like old Converse or something similar. His hair was kind of messy, like he'd just rolled out of bed. What got me, though, was his whole vibe. He didn't glance around, didn't say goodbye, didn't acknowledge whoever was driving. He just shut the door behind him and walked straight toward the laundromat entrance, eyes forward. No hesitation, no looking back. The moment he closed the door behind him, the station wagon pulled off. No pause, just pulled out and disappeared down the street. I stood there for a second, hugging myself against the cold, and then I thought, okay, maybe I can borrow his phone. Maybe his parents will actually pick up at 3 a.m., you know? So I turned around and went back into the laundromat. Inside, the TVs were still on, the news still playing. But the place was completely silent. No dryers spinning, no washing machines running, nothing. Just the soft drone of the anchor's voices and the hum of the lights. I looked around for the guy. No sign of him. No station wagon guy, no laundry basket, no open washer, no scattered clothes. Nothing. I thought, maybe he went straight to the bathroom. That would make sense, right? So I walked to the back, to that little hallway where the bathroom doors are. I pushed the bathroom door open and called out, "Hello?" No response. I tried again, louder. "Hey, sorry, is anyone in here?" Still nothing. The bathroom was empty. One stall door slightly open, the rest closed, but no feet, no sounds, just that weird, echoey quiet. And that's when it started again. The feeling that I wasn't alone, even though I clearly was. I stepped back into the main room, and as I did, I heard it. Clink, 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 clink. The sound of the change machine spitting out coins. If you've ever used one of those coin machines, you know that distinct metallic cascade sound, right? It was exactly that. The machine was going off like somebody was feeding in bills and getting quarters for their laundry. Only, no one was standing there. I walked closer, slowly, like I was trying not to scare whatever was happening. The machine kept making the noise, that steady rhythm of coins dropping into the tray. But when I looked down, the coin slot was empty. No quarters piling up, no loose coins rolling around. Just the sound, coming from nowhere. Something about that broke me a little. It was like the room was pretending to still be in use, pretending there were people doing laundry when there weren't. My heart was racing again, and all I could think was, I should not be here. So I did the same thing I'd done before. I left. But this time, when I pushed open the door and stepped outside, everything was different again. The parking lot was full. Cars everywhere. Different makes and models. A couple of people walking toward the entrance. Someone else slamming their trunk shut. The distant sound of music from a car radio. It looked exactly like it had when I first arrived. Like that empty, silent version of the lot had never existed. I didn't even try to make sense of it. I just started walking. I figured I'd find a gas station or a 24-hour place where I could sit and wait until morning, or until my parents finally picked up. To this day, I have no explanation for what happened in that laundromat. I don't know if I nodded off and slipped into some kind of half-dream, or if I walked into that place at the wrong time, like caught between two moments. I don't know who that woman was who lent me her phone, or where the station wagon guy really went. All I know is that the fear I felt was real. The emptiness, the strange, fake feeling of the news, the sound of coins that never appeared. Those details are burned into my memory. And even now, when I pass by a laundromat late at night, part of me wonders, was that just a tired brain playing tricks on me? Or did I step into something I wasn't supposed to see? So, let me tell you about this really strange night that still messes with my head. This was maybe a year and a half ago, in the middle of winter. I was ridiculously sick, like full-on flu, fever, body aches, the whole thing. I was sharing an apartment with my older sister, Nina, at the time. She's the kind of person who checks on you every few hours if you so much as sneeze, so she'd been popping into my room on and off all day. That night, I was in my bed, curtains closed, lights off except for this little warm bedside lamp. I felt absolutely awful, so I decided, okay, that's it. I'm just going to sleep this off. I remember feeling this wave of exhaustion hit me, like someone had just pulled the plug on my energy. The last thing I remember before knocking out was Nina coming into my room. She stepped in, leaned on the doorway for a second, then came over by my white dresser near the window. We had this quick little conversation. I honestly don't remember what we were talking about now, just that it was casual, nothing serious. She laughed at something I said, and I can still see her expression so clearly in my mind. Then she held out her phone and was like, "Hey, look at these texts real quick." I tried. I really did. But my eyes were burning, my head was pounding, and the words on her screen were all fuzzy. It was like trying to read underwater. I remember squinting and saying, "Ugh, I can't read that right now. I'm so tired. Just show me tomorrow, okay?" And she kind of shrugged and went, "All right, go to sleep," then turned and walked out of my room. I swear to you, not even a full second later, I was out. Like, gone. Deep, heavy sleep. I didn't toss and turn. I don't remember any dreams, nothing. Just darkness. A few hours later, I woke up. My fever had broken a little, and I was just lying there in bed scrolling through my phone, kind of dazed but awake. That's when Nina came into my room. Again. She walked in like normal, sat at the edge of my bed, and we started talking. We were mid-conversation about something totally random. I think about our cousin or some drama from work, when I suddenly remembered her trying to show me that text before I fell asleep. So I stopped and said, "Oh yeah, what was that message you were trying to show me earlier, on your phone?" And the way she looked at me, she was so confused. She goes, "What are you talking about? I came up here to see the messages you were trying to show me." Now I'm confused. I'm sick. I'm tired. My brain is foggy. And I'm thinking she's just messing with me. So I kind of frown and say, "No, Nina, I'm serious. You came in here before I went to sleep, stood over there by my dresser, and tried to show me some messages on your phone. I told you I was too tired and I'd look at it later." She shakes her head immediately and says, "No, that didn't happen. I never came in here. You came downstairs to Mom's place and tried to show me some messages, but I was too tired to read them, so I told you I'd look at them later. Then you said you were going to bed and went back upstairs." At this point, I'm getting irritated, because I feel awful and it really sounds like she's just playing with me for no reason. I'm like, "Why are you joking right now? I haven't left this bed. I remember you coming in here. I remember what side of the bed you were on. I remember you laughing. I couldn't read your screen because I was exhausted. I did not go anywhere." And she's just staring at me, dead serious, saying, "I'm not joking. I was at Mom's. You came down to see me." So now we're both confused and a little worked up. I'm insisting, "You came into my room." And she's insisting, "You came downstairs." Finally, I say, "Okay, you know what? Let's ask Mom." So I drag myself out of bed, still weak, still sick, and we both go downstairs to my mom's apartment. My mom opens the door, all casual, like nothing is weird. I ask her, "Hey, was Nina down here with you earlier? Or did she come upstairs to my room before I fell asleep?" My mom nods and says, "Yeah, Nina was here. She was sleeping in the back room for a while. You came down earlier, remember? You tried to show her something on your phone, but she was too tired to look at it. So you said you were going back to bed." Me and Nina just look at each other. That moment was silent. Just this weird, heavy pause. I could tell from her face she was thinking the exact same thing I was. How can we both remember the same situation, but from opposite sides? She finally says, kind of quietly, "I told you, I never came upstairs to your room." And I'm standing there like, I know what I experienced. I know I was awake. I remember you standing by my dresser. I remember your voice, your laugh, the way you held your phone out to me. I remember the angle of the light in the room. I wasn't dreaming. I wasn't drunk. I was just sick and exhausted, but I was awake. And she says, with the same conviction, "Well, I remember sitting on Mom's bed and you standing in the doorway, trying to show me your messages. I remember being too tired to focus on the screen. I remember your exact tone when you said you'd just show me later." Our stories match, but flipped. Same phone. Same, "I'm too tired to read it, I'll check later." Same feeling of exhaustion. Same kind of casual, sleepy conversation. Just completely reversed. To this day, if you ask us separately, we will both swear on our lives that our version is what really happened. I will tell you with my whole chest, she came into my room. She'll tell you with the same energy, I went downstairs to hers. And here's the thing, this isn't even the first weird thing that's happened between us. There have been other moments, even stranger, where reality just doesn't line up the way it's supposed to. I don't know if it was some kind of glitch, a crossed wire in both our memories, overlapping timelines, or something our brains did because we were both exhausted. All I know is, I wasn't dreaming, and neither was she. We were both absolutely sure we were fully awake, in two completely different places, having what feels like the same conversation from opposite sides. And honestly, I still have no idea how to make sense of that. Alright, so let me just tell you this straight, the way it happened. It was a weeknight, maybe around 11:15 p.m. or so. I was heading into town to grab a few things from the store. I live way out in the sticks. No streetlights, hardly any neighbors, just vegetation, trees, and dirt roads. About 10 minutes into the drive, my temperature gauge starts climbing. Next thing I know, the warning light pops on and the car starts to overheat. So I pull over on the shoulder of this 2-lane highway, kill the engine, pop the hood, and just stand there in the dark, listening to the metal tick. I let it cool for a while, check the radiator, top it off with the little bit of water I had, and think, okay, I'll just ease it home. I get maybe another couple miles down the road. Same thing. Temperature shoots up again. By now it's after midnight. I'm not that far from home. Maybe a mile and a quarter walk. It's a clear night. Stars out. A little chilly, but not miserable. And I'm thinking, why risk blowing the engine? I could use the exercise anyway. So I pull off a little more, lock the car up, throw my hands in my pockets, and decide to walk it. The road I live off of is this rough mountain back road. Not paved, mostly packed dirt and gravel, ruts everywhere. I walk along the highway first, then turn onto my road. There's just enough moonlight that my eyes adjust. I don't even bother with my phone flashlight. I'm moving at a pretty good pace, just wanting to get home and crawl into bed. So I'm about 2/3 of the way down my road, and on my left there's this long split-rail wooden fence and a gravel driveway that leads to one of the neighbors' places. I'm walking, minding my own business, when I hear something. Faint footsteps on gravel. Crunch, crunch. Very soft, but clear. Out of the corner of my eye, I see something coming up that driveway toward the road. And my first thought is not ghost or paranormal or anything like that. My first thought is, oh great, one of the neighbors thinks I'm out here creeping around, casing houses in the middle of the night. I'm fully expecting a flashlight in my face, maybe a gun, definitely some questions. Like, hey, what are you doing out here? So I'm bracing for that. And then I realize what I'm actually looking at. There's a man walking toward me, except I can see through him. At first, it's almost like that Predator effect. You know in the old movie, where the outline kind of shimmers and takes on the color of the trees behind it? It's like that. The shape is there, but it's blending a little with the background. As he gets closer, though, he becomes more defined. He looks like a solid guy, little broader build than me, around my height. He's wearing this red and gray flannel shirt, jeans, and these old work boots. His hair is sort of shaggy, like that almost mullet style you see on some country singers. And he is just gliding up this driveway toward the road. He steps out of the driveway onto the edge of the road, maybe 30 feet to my left, and then, this is the part that really got me. He turns and starts walking alongside me. We're not shoulder to shoulder, but he's pacing me, same speed, just off to my left by the fence line. We walk like that for, I don't know, 100 to 150 feet. Long enough for it not to be my imagination. Long enough for me to actually study him. The whole time he's not looking around, not checking the road. He's looking at me. We get to the end of that split rail fence, and that's where he stops. He slows, turns toward the fence, and just rests one arm up on the top rail, like someone leaning on a bar, and he keeps his eyes locked on me. I don't say a word. I don't wave. I don't break stride. I just keep walking, every hair on my head and neck standing straight up. My brain is going, nope, 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 this is not happening. But my eyes are saying, oh yeah, it is. I wanted so badly to look back, but I was terrified that if I did, he'd be closer, or something would be different. So I just face forward and keep walking, repeating in my head, what the hell was that? What did I just see? Did that really happen? Over and over. It's not even pure fear at first, it's disbelief. Like my whole understanding of what's real just got nudged sideways. As I get closer to my house, the feeling changes. It goes from disbelief to this really deep uneasiness. It's creeping me out more with every step, because now I'm replaying it. The way he came deliberately down that driveway. The way he walked beside me like he'd come out just to meet me on the road. That sad look on his face. And it was sad. That's the part that sticks with me the most. He didn't look angry or threatening. He looked like he wanted to say something. Like he had something important he needed to tell me, but couldn't get the words out. I finally get home, lock the door maybe a little faster than usual, and I don't sleep great that night. Just keep hearing gravel footsteps in my head. Next morning, I'm in the kitchen, making coffee and trying to act normal, but it's eating at me. So I tell my dad, his name's Mark, what happened. I say, look, I know this is going to sound crazy, but I need to tell you about something I saw last night on the road. Now, I've always been open to the idea of UFOs, aliens, all that. I figured the universe is big. Who knows what's out there? But ghosts? Spirits? I've always thought that stuff was just stories. Fun for movies, but not real life. So I'm telling my dad this whole thing, expecting him to just kind of nod and chalk it up to headlights or my eyes playing tricks on me. And yeah, he's got that skeptical look at first. But then he stops me and asks, "Okay, exactly where did this happen?" And I say, "You know that long split-rail fence on the left? The one by that gravel driveway before our place? Right there." And I watch his whole expression change. He goes quiet for a second and then says, "You remember I told you about that neighbor down there? The one who, passed away in his house? That's the driveway." It hits me all at once. I remember him mentioning, about a year before I moved back in, that a guy who lived down that drive had taken his own life. We didn't know him well, just a quiet neighbor who kept to himself most of the time. And I'm standing there in the kitchen with my coffee, and suddenly I've got tears in my eyes. The goosebumps come back, full force. My whole body feels electric. Because now it's not just a weird figure on a dark road. It's possibly someone. A real person. Someone whose house I walk past all the time without thinking. Up until that night, I would have told you, with total confidence, that all paranormal stuff was nonsense. Just stories people tell. But I swear to you, with my whole chest, I saw a man. I saw him like I'm seeing this room right now. And at the same time, I saw through him. I wasn't drunk. I wasn't high. I was just tired and trying to get home because my stupid car overheated. And then, that happened. Part of me hopes I never see anything like that again. And another part of me, the part that keeps thinking about his face, wonders what he was trying to say, and if he'll ever try to say it again. So, let me just tell you this straight, because I still don't fully understand it myself. It was supposed to be just a walk. Nothing dramatic, nothing cursed. Just me being stupid and restless. There's this old cemetery behind our town. You know the kind. Forgotten, overgrown. The kind adults warn kids about for no real reason. I'd passed it 100 times in daylight, but that night I thought, why not? It was close to midnight. The sky was heavy, and the air smelled like wet leaves and iron. The gate was half off its hinges. When I pushed it, it didn't just creak, it screamed. I swear that sound went straight into my teeth. I stepped through, and as soon as both my feet were inside, the gate slammed shut behind me. I didn't touch it. I just stood there for a second, heart pounding, telling myself it was the wind. You do that too, right? Immediately try to rationalize stuff so you don't freak out. My phone flashlight was the only thing cutting through the fog. The graves were everywhere, some leaning, some sunk into the earth, some cracked open like something had climbed out long ago and never bothered to clean up. Then I saw it, a shape, a figure, standing between two crooked gravestones. Tall, too still. You know when your brain tries to pretend something is a tree or a statue just so you don't panic? That's what I did. I squinted into the fog and whispered, "Hey, you okay?" No answer. My flashlight flickered once, twice, and then cut out completely. Everything went black. And in that darkness, right next to my ear, so close I could feel the warmth of it, I heard breathing. Slow, wet, like whoever it was had just run a long way and was trying not to let me hear. I froze. I didn't move, didn't turn around. I just stood there, clenching my phone in my hand like it was a weapon. Then, just as suddenly as it went out, the light came back. The figure was gone. I spun around. Nothing. Just grave after grave, fog curling between them like it was alive. And right in front of me, a few steps ahead, was a stone that didn't look like the others. Older, darker. The edges had been eaten away by time. The letters were deep, carved by hand, not machine. I walked up to it without really deciding to. It felt like being pulled. The name carved into it was Thomas, 1327, 1402. An old name, old dates, just another grave, right? I don't know why I did it, but I knelt down and pressed my fingers to the stone. It was freezing. Not cold like a rock at night, cold like metal pulled from a freezer. And then it happened. For less than a second, the name changed. Right under Thomas, the stone shifted. The letters stretched and bent like they were made of smoke and ice, and new ones carved themselves into the surface, glowing faintly through the fog. Daniel, 1993, 2025. My first name, my birth year, and this year. I felt the world tilt. For a second, I thought I was going to pass out right there on that grave. My phone screen shut off again, but this time it wasn't just the light. The whole thing went dead in my hand. No battery warning, no flicker, just black. Then I heard it. Not in the air, not in my ears. Inside my head, like a thought that wasn't mine. You're early. It wasn't angry. It wasn't kind. It was disappointed. That broke whatever courage I had left. I don't remember standing up. I don't remember turning around. I just remember running, branches smacking my face, stones sliding under my feet, feeling like someone's eyes were pinned between my shoulder blades the whole way. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I did what everyone does when something doesn't make sense. I opened my laptop. I searched everything I could think of. Thomas 1327 through 1402 grave. Old cemetery legend. Ancient tombstone name changing. I even tried Latin versions of the name. Nothing. No local legends, no ghost stories, no weird history. Like that grave didn't exist. So I tried something else. I opened our town's group chat. You know, the kind where people complain about noise and post pictures of lost dogs. I scrolled up, way up, because I remembered something. A random line I'd half read weeks before. I found it. Luca, did anyone else see that thing near the old cemetery? Jonas, yeah, by that really old grave at the back. Mira, the one with the name Thomas? I stared at the messages, and my whole body went cold. They were dated from a month ago. I'd seen them then and just kept scrolling. I thought they were joking. Right under those messages was another one. No name, no profile picture. Just a gray circle and a blank display name. It said, "Those who see me don't stop at the first time." As I read it, my phone glitched. The screen froze, turned white, then black. It restarted on its own. When it finally came back on, I went straight to the chat. The messages were gone. Not just that one. The whole section of the conversation. Like someone had highlighted those lines and hit delete on reality. 3 days passed. I told myself I wasn't going back. That I wasn't that stupid. That whatever I saw, whatever I heard, it was probably my brain trying to freak me out. But the thing is, after that night, my house didn't feel empty anymore. I'd catch myself turning around because I was sure someone was standing in the doorway. I'd wake up at night convinced someone was leaning over my bed, even though I'd open my eyes and see nothing in the dark. The third night, at 12:33 a.m., my phone buzzed. One message, from a blank account. Same gray circle as before. I grabbed the phone instantly, but the notification vanished before I could tap it. No new chat. No new message. Just this cold, heavy feeling in my chest. On the fourth day, I couldn't take it anymore. I went back. The sky was clearer this time, the moon sharp and thin. The gate didn't scream. It swung open quietly, like it had been waiting for me. I walked straight to where I remembered the old grave. Except, it wasn't there. The patch of earth was disturbed, like something had been dug up in a hurry and then half-heartedly filled back in. No stone, no name, just a metal stake hammered into the ground. One word scratched into it, not engraved, scratched, like with a knife or a nail. Remember. I just stood there, mouth dry, heart racing. And then I heard it. Footsteps behind me. Slow, dragging, like bare feet on wet grass. I turned around. It was there. The figure I'd seen before, except closer now. Too close. It wasn't just a shadow this time. It had a face, if you could call it that. The skin was too pale, stretched too tight. The eyes were wrong. Too deep, too dark, too empty. The mouth hung half open, like it was always in the middle of a breath it could never quite finish. Its head tilted, like it was studying me, or recognizing me. It lifted one arm slowly, so slowly, and pointed past me, to the disturbed patch of earth where the grave used to be. And in that same quiet, breathy voice inside my head, it said, "The place is ready." My throat closed up. I couldn't scream, couldn't move. My body felt like it was filled with cement. The only thing that worked was my heartbeat, slamming against my ribs. I don't remember turning away. I don't remember running back through the gate. But I remember the sound I heard as I left. Breathing. Right behind me. Keeping pace. Not getting tired. I made it home. Somehow. Again. One new message. No name, no picture. Same blank account. By the time I grabbed the phone, the notification was gone. No chat, no trace. But for a split second, when the screen woke up, I saw the preview. I'm still waiting. It happens every night now. 33 a.m. Screen lights up. Blank account. Message appears. Vanishes. Sometimes I can catch part of the preview. Don't be late. You know where. The year is almost over. And once. You shouldn't have touched the stone, Daniel. I've tried blocking unknown accounts. I've changed my number. I've switched phones. It doesn't matter. It always finds a way to send that one message at that exact time. Here's the part that really scares me, though. Last week, I went to visit my parents. They still live closer to the old part of town. On the way back, I passed the cemetery road. I told myself I wouldn't look, that I'd just keep walking, eyes forward, pretend the place wasn't there. But I did look. Just once. There's a new headstone near the back now. Smooth, pale stone, clean and recent, like it's waiting for fresh letters. No name on it. Not yet. But right in front of it, sticking out of the earth, is that same metal stake. The word has changed. It doesn't say "remember" anymore. Now it says, "already yours." So this is why I'm telling you all of this. Not to get you to feel sorry for me or to make you believe in ghosts. Honestly, I don't care if you believe me. I just need you to listen. If you're ever traveling and you end up in some old European town with a forgotten cemetery at the edge of it, and you're bored or curious or trying to impress someone, if you walk among the older graves and you find a stone that reads, Thomas, 1327 to 1402, don't touch it. Don't kneel down. Don't trace the letters. Don't even say the name out loud. Because if you do, if you give it your attention, you won't just remember the grave. You'll start hearing the breathing, too. So, let me tell you about the night that still makes my chest feel tight when I think about it. It was my second year at Northbridge University, and the rumor going around campus was that if you visited the old hillside cemetery after midnight, you wouldn't come back with the same number of people you went in with. We laughed it off, obviously. We were 19, full of instant noodles and overconfidence. There were 11 of us that night. We met by the back gate of the dorms just before midnight. Everyone had something. Cheap chips, bottled tea, a flashlight. Somebody brought a tiny Bluetooth speaker. I remember the air was thick, kind of sticky, like the world had been holding its breath all day and only started exhaling once we stepped outside. The cemetery sat behind the university's old library, up this narrow path where the streetlights never quite reached. As we walked, some of us linked arms. Not because we were scared, at least that's what we said, but because it felt like the right thing to do when you're pretending not to be afraid. I was walking next to this guy we all called Echo. That wasn't his real name, but he talked in this soft way that made people lean in to listen, and jokes tended to bounce back to him. So, Echo stuck. Anyway, the sky was cloudy, but it wasn't foggy at first. That came later. We slipped through the old iron gate, half open, like it had been waiting for us. The stone path was cracked, weeds pushing through. Some headstones were leaning, some broken. The whole place had this feeling, like it remembered more than it should. Someone in the back started humming a childish ghost song, and we all shushed them. It was just us, but it didn't feel like just us. Not long after we stepped in, the weather shifted. You know when it gets cold so suddenly that your skin prickles before your brain catches up? It was like that. The wind picked up, sharp and fast, and this fine, cold drizzle started falling. Needles on our cheeks, on our hands. Then, out of nowhere, snow started mixing with the rain, in the middle of late autumn. Tiny white flakes swirling in the beam of our flashlight. We all kind of laughed it off. Wow, weird timing, right? But I could feel the way everyone's shoulders tensed. And then it happened. One of the girls up front let out this raw, honest scream. We spun around, lights swinging over tombstones and grass, and she was just standing there, shaking, pointing at the space next to her. "I was holding his arm," she said. "I was holding his arm." The space beside her was empty. Echo, who had been right next to her a second before, was gone. At first, we thought he'd jumped behind a gravestone as a joke. It would have been exactly the kind of stupid prank someone would pull, right? So we called his name. We laughed a little too loudly. "Okay, Echo, come on. Not funny. You can come out." Nothing. That's when someone said, "Let's count, just to be sure." So we lined up as best we could in that uneven, wet ground, and one of the guys started counting, tapping each shoulder as the flashlight beam passed over our faces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He frowned. "Wait, there were 11 of us," I said. "Count again," someone muttered. We did, but this time something felt wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Still 10. Echo was missing, but it didn't feel like we were one short. It felt even, like the group had sealed itself at 10 and refused to admit he was gone. Everyone told her she was being creepy, but nobody told her she was wrong. We should have left. Any reasonable person would have turned around right there. But real life isn't reasonable, and neither are 19-year-olds fueled by myths and midnight bravado. Someone said, "We can't just leave Echo here." And that was it. The decision was made. We pushed deeper into the cemetery. The fog rolled in slowly, like it had been waiting for its cue. It gathered low at first, curling around our ankles, then rose up, softening the edges of gravestones until they looked like crooked teeth in a ghost's mouth. Trees at the far end blurred into smudges of shadow. I remember clutching my flashlight so hard my fingers cramped. We kept calling his name. "Echo! Hey! Answer if you hear us!" The sound of our voices flattened out, like the fog was swallowing them. And then, all at once, we saw him. He was standing near a black, cracked headstone with no name on it, just a faint, worn-out carving that was impossible to read. Our lights hit him altogether, and everyone froze. Because it was Echo, and it wasn't. His hair, he'd had this messy, dark hair before, was gone, like it had been shaved right down to the scalp, but unevenly, like it hadn't been done by clippers. His skin looked too pale, but not the usual "I'm cold" kind of pale. It was this almost gray color, stretched thin, and there were these faint red marks and scratches appearing on his arms as we stared, like someone invisible was dragging a pen along his skin. He had his hands pressed over his face, long, bony fingers, knuckles white. His shoulders shook. One of our friends took a step forward, whispering, "Echo?" He flinched. We all stopped. He spoke without taking his hands away, his voice rough and small. "Don't touch me." The way he said it, it wasn't fake. It wasn't a joke. There was this desperation in it, the kind that makes your stomach drop. "Echo, it's us," I said. "We came back for you. We're going to take you home, okay? Just look at us." "Don't follow me," he whispered. "Don't follow where I went." His words didn't make sense, but the fear behind them did. Someone tried to circle around to see his face. He turned with them, like he was protecting us from whatever expression he was hiding. And then we all heard it. The wind moving through the broken tombs, carrying these thin, almost voices. Just at the edge of hearing, little pieces of words that sounded like names, curses, or prayers. I couldn't tell. It felt like they were being said right behind my ear and far away at the same time. I remember thinking, this place doesn't want us here, and it doesn't want to let him go. One of the guys, tall, always the first to crack a joke in class, stepped up and said, gently, "Hey man, we're going to get you out of here, okay? You don't have to look at us, just come with us." He reached out, very slowly, and brushed Echo's sleeve. Just the fabric. Echo screamed. Not loud exactly, but deep, like something tearing inside him. We all stumbled backward. My heart was hammering so hard I felt dizzy. He dropped his hands just enough for me to see his eyes. You know how a person's eyes tell you everything about them? These didn't. They looked almost like they belonged to someone standing a few steps behind him, peering through. But they were still Echo's eyes too. That's what made it so awful. You could see the boy we knew in there, trapped behind something we couldn't touch. We'd only lost him for maybe 15 minutes, 20 max. But hearing him say that, in that place, in that cold, time suddenly felt stretchy, unreliable. Somebody started crying softly. Another person kept saying, "This isn't funny anymore," even though there hadn't been anything funny for a while. The thing is, we still loved him, still cared about him. Whatever had happened, that didn't disappear. So we did the only thing that made sense in that moment. We surrounded him. Not too close, but close enough to make a circle. We didn't touch him again, but we walked with him, step by slow step, back toward the gate. And as we walked, you could feel the cemetery adjusting, like it was letting something go that it wanted to keep. The fog thinned out. The strange snow rain slowed. The whispers faded into just wind again. By the time we reached the gate, the sky had cleared. The storm had just stopped. No sign it had ever been as bad as we'd felt it. The world outside the fence looked ordinary. Streetlights, quiet roads, the distant glow of the campus dorm windows. It was like we'd stepped from one reality back into another. When we counted ourselves at the gate, there were 11 again. No extra, no missing, just different. We walked Echo back to the dorms in silence. No one joked, no one explained. no one could. Later, we tried to talk about it. The story kept shifting, depending on who told it. Some people insisted his hair hadn't really fallen out, that it just looked shorter in the light. Others swore they'd seen fresh wounds appear on his skin as we watched. A few claimed they'd heard their own names whispered in the wind, even though nobody else heard that. Echo stayed with us after that, but he was quieter. Sometimes I'd catch him staring at a wall like he was listening for something. Once, when I asked him what he remembered, he just said, "I stepped between two graves, and for a second I wasn't here. I was somewhere close, but wrong. And something there saw me first." He never went near the cemetery again. Neither did I. Here's what I know, though. What I feel, even now, telling you this. Some places don't just sit there. They lean. They reach. They bend the rules around themselves like heat over a road. That cemetery behind our old library, it's one of those places. It stretches reality, tugs at time, and sometimes, if you're not careful, it takes a piece of you and sends back something altered. Not gone, not fully broken, just changed. We brought our friend back that night. But every now and then, when the wind hits just right and I hear a voice in the distance that sounds like it's saying my name, I wonder, did we really bring all of him back? Or did some part of him stay there, standing by that nameless stone, listening to the whispers, while something else slipped into his place and learned how to say, "Don't touch me, don't follow me, not where I went." All right, come a little closer. I want to tell you a story, and I need you to really listen, not just with your ears, but with that quiet place behind your ribs where old memories tend to hide. There are forests in this world that breathe. I don't mean that in a poetic way, though it sounds like it. I mean there are places where the trees seem to inhale and exhale, where the branches trade secrets with the wind, and where the moonlight falls like it remembers everything it's ever seen. That's where I was. I remember walking through one of those forests late on a winter night. The sky above us was dark as ink, and the stars looked like someone had stitched them into the black with silver thread. The leaves were rimmed with frost, and a thin wind was slipping between the trunks, sighing its way down the hill. I say us because I wasn't alone. My two children walked just behind me, Noah and Elsie. At least, that's what I called them when they were mine. I wasn't shivering, even though it was cold enough for our breaths to fog, except they didn't. I wasn't tired, even though it felt like we'd been walking for hours upon hours. My legs moved, but there was no ache in them, no heaviness in my feet. If you've ever had a dream where you're moving, but it feels like you're gliding instead of walking, yes, it was that. I remember humming an old lullaby, something my grandmother used to hum by the fireplace when storms rattled the windows. I didn't even think about it. The tune just slipped out of me like it had been waiting. Behind me, the kids tried to laugh at something. Some smiles, some shared joke. But the sound came out thin, like the forest swallowed it before it had a chance to become real. And then Elsie, my little one, pointed at the ground. "Look," she said, and her voice was soft and cold at the same time, like snow landing on bare skin. "Mama, look at this." She bent down, pushed aside a few frozen leaves, and picked up a photograph. That part still makes my skin prickle, even now. Noah leaned over her shoulder. I stepped closer, and all three of us stared. It was us. Not the forest us, the alive us. We were standing in front of a small stone house with ivy climbing up the walls, the kind of place that always smelled like soup and laundry and something baking. In the picture, my cheeks were flushed, my hair a little messy from the wind. The kids were squinting into the sun, both mid-giggle. You could almost hear the laughter. We looked warm, solid, real. Not like we did in that forest. In the forest, our faces just didn't change. Same unblinking eyes, same pale skin, no breath clouding the air, no tiredness, no hunger. You know when you see an old doll whose painted face never moves? It was a little like that, only somehow sadder. Elsie turned the photograph over. On the back, in my handwriting, was a date from several years before, and beneath the date, I had drawn a tiny feather and 3 little dots, like I always did when I wrote something meant only for us. My secret mark. The wind stopped. I know that sounds dramatic, but it did. The forest inhaled and then held it. Noah swallowed. "Mom," he whispered, "why do we still look like this? Why haven't we grown at all?" And something in me tightened, like a knot that had been ignored for too long. Before I could answer, we heard it. A distant sound drifting through the trees. Not a clock tower this time, though I've heard stories like that. No, for us, it was the bell from the church in the village below, rolling up the hill. Slow, heavy, counting the seconds toward midnight. I don't know how I knew, but I did. "We should follow it," I murmured. "I think it belongs to us somehow." So we walked. Eventually the trees thinned, and we came to the edge of the village. It looked almost exactly like it had in the photograph. Lanterns glowing behind curtains, smoke curling from chimneys, the cobblestones shining faintly with frost. Someone's dog barked once, then went quiet, ears pricked toward us without knowing why. In a window of the little church on the hill, we could see a clock, hands trembling their way toward 12. And when it struck, when that bell rang out and the 12th chime rolled over the roofs, everything in me snapped into place. Memories hit me like a wave, not gently either, not like a nostalgic montage. No, like ice water dumped over my shoulders. I remembered. A winter storm, the road slick with sleet, the car skidding, headlights coming toward us too fast, Noah screaming my name, the world flipping, the sound of metal twisting, glass exploding, and then the weightless, terrifying moment when there's no up, no down, just falling. And then the river, black and furious. I remembered the water forcing its way into my lungs, the desperate reach for my children's hands, the sound of my husband, Adrian, shouting their names, trying to yank open a door that wouldn't budge. And then, nothing. I gasped in the forest. So did the children. We clutched at each other like people do when the floor cracks under their feet. We remembered. We were dead. We weren't just lost or dreaming or caught in some strange winter spell. We were ghosts, echoes, the shadows of a melody that had once been warm. Noah's fingers tightened around my wrist. If we're spirits," he said, voice shaking, "why are we still here? Why didn't we go wherever you're supposed to go?" I wish I'd had a reassuring answer then. Something wise, something comforting. All I had was a heavy feeling in the place where my heart used to live. "There must be something unfinished," I said quietly. "We haven't let go of everything yet. I think we need to see your father." So, guided more by instinct than by thought, we drifted through the silent village streets. We passed closed shutters, quiet kitchens, toys left askew in back gardens. No one saw us, of course. A cat arched its back and hissed at the empty air as we went by, that kind of almost seeing that animals sometimes do. We stopped outside a house I knew too well. Our house. The ivy still climbed the stone walls exactly like in the photograph. Same crooked front step, same cracked flower pot by the door. But everything felt colder now, like the warmth had been scraped off the surface of it. Through the window, we saw him. Adrian. His face, once the kind of face I leaned into without thinking, was hollowed out. Grief and years had carved shadows into his features. Guilt sat in his eyes like something that refused to move. But he wasn't alone. A woman sat beside him on the couch. She was younger than me, at least younger than I had been. She had that careful, gentle way of smiling at someone who's been hurt for a long time. She reached for his hand, and he let her. He looked at her like a man who'd been walking in the cold for years and had finally found a fire. Inside me, something dark and sharp twisted. He had moved on. He had found someone new. Our framed photos weren't on the mantel. The kids' drawings weren't on the fridge. To us, it felt like he'd replaced us and erased us in one life-size sweep. Beside me, Noah's jaw clenched. Elsie's small fingers turned to ice in my hand. "Did he just forget?" she whispered. "Did we matter so little?" I wish I could tell you I answered with maturity and grace, that I immediately saw the bigger picture, understood his pain, his right to continue his life. But the truth is, in that moment, all I felt was raw, aching betrayal. The lamp on the table flickered. The window glass trembled in its frame. Adrian looked up, startled, eyes scanning the room as if he sensed something he couldn't see. And our voices, mine and the children's, slid into the room like cold breath. "Why did you leave us?" The new woman's smile vanished. She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering. Adrian stood slowly, his face draining of color. "Who's there?" he whispered. "Who?" "We didn't leave you," Noah said, his voice echoing in a way that didn't belong to the living. "You left us. You let us go." Memories were flooding him too, I could see it. The accident, the river, his hands bloody from clawing at the doors, his screaming for help that arrived too late, the way they pulled him out instead of us, his empty bed that night, and every night after when he reached for people who were not there. He shook his head, tears filling his eyes. "I tried," he choked out. "I tried to get you out. I would have traded places with you. I would have." I stepped through the wall then, into the room, into the warmth of the fire and the smell of tea. It didn't touch me. I felt nothing. "Not enough," I said. And that sentence, oh, that sentence, I regret the shape of it even now. The new woman, her name was Mara, I would learn later, pressed herself back against the chair, her hand over her mouth. She had never seen us in photographs. She had never heard our names. Adrian had buried us under silence because talking about us hurt too much. She was innocent. But in that moment, we didn't care about innocence. The room turned colder than the river had been. Picture frames rattled and fell, glass cracking on the floor. Candles blew out. The fire shuddered and dimmed. Shadows slid up the walls like smoke running backward. We didn't throw anything. We didn't scream. But our grief filled every inch of that house, and it was loud. Adrian dropped to his knees, one arm thrown in front of Mara like he could protect her from his past. "Stop," he begged. "Please, I'm so sorry. I wake up choking on your names. I talk to the empty rooms. I'd give everything to go back to that night. Please, please." It lasted seconds, maybe a little more. And then it was done. One last shock of cold, one last burst of force, and the house went dark. For us, at least. Like someone had snapped their fingers and switched scenes. Because suddenly we were no longer in the village. We were standing on the edge of a valley filled with mist. It wasn't heaven. It wasn't hell. It was a kind of in-between. It stretched farther than my eyes could see, lit by a light that wasn't really day or night. Just there. And then a presence appeared. I can't give you a neat label for it. Angel, guardian, judge. It was radiant, but not in a blinding way. Calm. Older than anything I'd ever felt. When it looked at us, I had the sense that it wasn't just seeing us as we were that moment, but as we had been, all the way back. and as we might have been if different choices had been made. "You're looking for justice," it said. The voice was gentle, but it held a weight you couldn't argue with. "But what you chose was vengeance." My knees almost gave out. "He replaced us," I whispered. "He forgot. He gave our love away like it was something you could just hand off to someone new." "No," the presence said, and there was no anger in it, just steady truth. "He mourned. He shattered. He tried to save you and could not. His guilt has slept beside him every night since. He did not kill you." My hands, whatever I had instead of hands, rose to cover my face. "And her?" Noah asked, voice much smaller now. "The woman on the couch, Mara, wasn't she part of it? The betrayal?" "She knew nothing," the presence said. "He hid his pain, thinking it was kindness. She came to him with a whole heart, hoping to help him live again. She carries no guilt for your deaths, for your silence, or for his fear of grief. Her conscience is clear." Elsie stared down at her feet. "We scared her," she whispered. "We hurt her." "Yes," the presence replied. "You did." There was a pause, a long one, the kind that has enough space inside it to hold everything: regret, understanding, stubbornness, love. "What happens to us now?" I finally asked. The presence regarded us with something like sympathy. "You acted in anger," it said. "You chose to wound instead of to seek truth. You let bitterness speak louder than love. But you did not do so out of cruelty. You did so out of pain." It gestured toward the valley of mist before us. "So you will walk the valley of sorrow," it said, "not as punishment alone, but as a path of repentance. There you will learn to see clearly his grief, your own, and the way love can survive even when people break under it." Elsie clung to my side. Noah took my hand. "And them?" I asked. "Adrian and Mara?" "Mara rises to peace," the voice said. "Her fear of tonight will soften. She will come to understand that what brushed her world was not evil, but wounded. She will heal. She deserves dawn, not shadow." "And Adrian?" I asked, my voice cracking on his name. "He will feel the weight of what happened," the presence said, "of his choices, both the ones he made and the ones he was never given the chance to make. He is not condemned, but he is not untouched. Grief is not clean. Love is not simple. He, too, will walk a valley of his own until he can forgive himself." I let out a sound then. Not rage. Not anymore. It was something closer to release. We turned toward the mist. The valley ahead of us shimmered like water under starlight. Each step we took felt like walking through memories, good ones and bad ones both. I heard the kids' laughter in the old kitchen, the splash of them jumping in puddles, the snap of my temper on hard days, the apologies afterward, Adrian's arms around all three of us under 2 small blankets. As we walked, the presence called after us softly. "Even lost souls may find sunrise when bitterness yields to truth." That sentence has stayed with me. So we went on, not as angry spirits anymore, but as 3 tired hearts, learning to let go of a story we'd been telling ourselves, that we were thrown away, forgotten, replaced. We weren't. We were loved. We died too soon, yes. We were hurt, yes, but we were loved, and that mattered more than the shape of our ending. Back in the living world, the clocks kept chiming. Leaves kept falling. Families gathered at tables, argued about small things, made up, burned dinner, laughed. Our forest still whispered. The river kept moving. And if you ever find yourself on a chilly October night walking near an old hillside forest, and you hear a faint lullaby drifting through the trees, a tune that feels like home and goodbye at the same time, that might be me. Not haunting, just remembering. And if you take anything from our story, let it be this. Love really does reach beyond death. But peace? Peace doesn't live in vengeance. It lives in truth. messy, complicated, painful truth, and in the courage to see it, even when it asks you to loosen your grip on your anger. That's all.